Hello, everyone. We should be live. You should be able to hear us and see us, hopefully. We'll be starting in just a second. Hopefully, there's no technical issues. I don't see why there would be, but you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
You just never know. I do need to pull up the Windows blog, though.
Mute this, turn down the settings, save that precious bandwidth.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not even
What's your up
using-
and down? I can't remember.
I'm 220 down,
No, that's not bad.
but only 20 up, which
Yeah.
usually equals around 18, 19 up.
I'm 80 down and 20 up, so
Yeah, that's...
it's bad.
Well, I mean, that should be just enough,
Mm.
but
Yeah, I generally find it is just enough, but nothing more.
it stinks. The town we lived in had Verizon Fios, which is the really high-speed internet. And now where we are, we don't have it, and there's probably no plans for it because this is America, and we just have a terrible infrastructure.
Yeah.
We are, though, just thinking about moving back. And one of the reasons we want is just because it's like we can get Verizon Fios, because now they're offering gigabit speeds up and down, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know how much better I'd be at this job if I had gigabit? We would do Dan streams 24/7.
Yeah, just
Thinking about
a live
4K.
feed into your house.
Exactly.
Check
So-
in on Dan.
But the idea of moving again, we moved a lot last couple of years, and now we have a house. It's like
Yeah.
Every time you
you
move,
got to settle somewhere.
you accumulate more stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I also don't want to move because of my old kitty. It confused the hell out of her. She'd be like, "What's going
Oh,
on?
Yeah, yeah.
It's so old. I don't know where anything is anymore." All right, let's see. Let's get this sheets ready. Oh, that's too big.
Hanley
No,
says,
I don't-
I like the new office setup. It looks great. Thanks. I'm not too sure if I want the desk here, though, so I'm still trying to figure it out. I was trying to find the feng shui of the room.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, you ready to go?
Yep, I am now recording.
I am now recording, and let me get that ready. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 213 for February 19th, 2021. Hey everyone, Jan Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we discuss all things Microsoft, Windows, Xbox, Surface, and other cool things in tech that's happening around the world. We have, the show used to be like an hour long, and now it's turning to an hour and a half, and sometimes pushing 2 hours. I believe today may be closer to the 2 hour mark, just because there's surprisingly a lot of news this week. So we'll try to not spend too long on them. I will probably have one or maybe two rants, depending on how I feel, if the caffeine kicks in. Let's go through the list of what we're going to talk about this week. So first off, we're going to kick it off with Windows 10 20H1 news, as well as the latest dev channel. Yeah, I got it right there. Dev channel, not ring. We don't do rings anymore, apparently. But the news on the dev channel release that just came out this afternoon. Then we'll talk about Windows market share via IDC. There's some news around that this week and what it means for Microsoft. Just some interesting numbers and perspectives for people. And we'll talk about that. That's the one where I may have a little rant on. We'll talk about Microsoft Edge. Edge has got a ton of updates, depending on what channel you're on, of course. But we'll just I'm not going to separate them all because I can't keep track. But we'll kind of go through some of the movement that's been happening there. Edge is just, it's on fire. That team is just kind of, I know a lot of people complain about Windows 10 not getting a ton of development lately, but boy, Edge sure is. Some software tips. So there are two new apps that are kind of out there that if you're very interested in Sun Valley, the big UI update that's due this fall, these are two free apps that will kind of get you some of the way there today. And that's just kind of cool stuff. And we'd like to shout out to some developers, as well as Microsoft released a new Garage app. We'll talk about what that means, called Journal. And we'll talk about that. I haven't really used it too much yet, but we'll just give it a shout out and kind of go through what it is. Microsoft announced a new Xbox headset. kudos to them for keeping this under wraps. Although there are rumors of this stuff flying around, but this $99 headset is proving to be extremely popular, even though it's just up for pre-orders already. We'll talk about what that all means. Some laptop news and reviews. So Samsung has some new laptops apparently coming out later this spring. So we'll talk about what those look like and could be. And I'm up to my neck in laptops. The side effect of the pandemic is every company has created and wants to send out laptops for review. And I did 2 fun ones this week. I've talked about this before, how it gets a little boring sometimes covering just Ultrabook, but these are 2 wild ones. The Toughbook 33 revised, as well as VioZ. And Vio is such a fascinating company. So we'll kind of go through those a little bit. Not too much time. They are niche devices, but I'm also fascinated by them. Some Surface Duo news. There was an update this week that kind of came out of nowhere, but doesn't seem to be too big of a one. But it is now on sale and available in more markets today. And perhaps Zach has some more info he can share there. The thing of the week, Zach, I forgot to ask, do you have a thing of the week this week?
I'll probably have one by the end of the show.
Fair enough. I actually think I have some, even though pandemic life is limiting. My life is basically watching TV at night with a kitty on my lap or just reviewing laptops and covering Microsoft and Windows. There's not a whole lot in between. So I'll tell you which one, it is for this week. But that's going to be the list. So I guess we'll get through it. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday? You do have a new funky background. And I should mention we're now live this week. We weren't last week. You want to explain that whole situation?
I didn't have a computer that could stream last week, so that's why we didn't do it live last week. But my third Studio 2, which is annoying, has arrived and appears to be working without issue. It still has... This one and the last model I had, they have like really loud coil whine, but only for a few seconds when you turn it on for the first time. And then it goes away. So, I think that's fine. I'm not returning this one as well. Coil whine is something we just have to live with in the world. But yeah, other than that, my new background, I've moved the office around slightly. I'm not too sure if I want to keep it like this, but we're trying it out for now. You can see I've put all of my prototypes and rare stuff in the back. There's a McLaren, there's a white Microsoft Band, there's a Surface Mini. Oh, there's a Harman Kardon Invoke there as well, which is fun. There's all kinds of things back there.
So that's your Microsoft morgue?
Yeah, basically. It's a graveyard, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the McLaren. I remember doing that video. That was kind of fun to do years ago. The legendary device that almost was. That really signals... I've said this before, but when we broke that story about it being canceled, that was even before you were at Windows Central, I believe. Yep. That, to me, really signaled the big decline of what was to be Windows Phone. Yeah. Because I remember thinking, like, at that point, like, Windows Phone was like 90% Nokia, like in terms of market share. And I said this before, where Nokia was the best thing that happened to them, but also the worst. The worst part was because companies like HTC and Samsung and LG wiped their hands. They're like, you know what? Nokia is just dominating too much. We're not even going to bother. We're going to focus on Android where we have a better chance. And once Nokia / Microsoft canceled McLaren, I was just like, so what's the flagship phone?
Yeah.
Because that's what it was, right? And, I've said this before. It's like when you build a flagship, you don't go, like, here's plan B if this flagship doesn't, like, there's no, like, if you're building an iPhone 12, there's no, like, yeah, but what happens if we don't do the iPhone 12? Then what? And that's when the HTC One M8, HTC did kind of come to the rescue of Microsoft and made that phone, which was a really cool phone, actually. Yeah. But it wasn't quite up to par, and, that really sort of signaled the decline then of Microsoft.
Do you remember when the McLaren was cancelled? The timeline for that? Was it 2014?
I believe it was 2014.
Was it before or after the Nokia acquisition? It must have been after, right? Or at least
I think it was during that process.
Yeah. I do wonder if Microsoft killed the McLaren, because I doubt Nokia would have, but I think maybe that was a Microsoft decision.
So the news, I mean, now we're really dredging up old stuff here, but I believe what I was told was So that device, obviously, wow, we're getting already off topic on this podcast, but I know this audience is probably like, yes, let's hear this. So McLaren, of course, had the 3D touch. That was its big secret, right?
Yeah.
This hovering technology and all this. From what I understand, the technology behind it, and specifically the boards and the components they needed to source to manufacture this, basically fell through. There was something there about them choosing the wrong tech, or they weren't going to be able to mass produce it. So there were like technological reasons why it was going to be problematic for them to make this device, as well as there was sort of internal changes going in with Microsoft and Nokia at the time about what to do. I also believe this was at the time where Surface Phone internally was still kicking around. And, you know, there's a lot of moving parts here. And so I'm not sure there's one single thing that caused it to be canceled, but there was a lot going on between Microsoft and Nokia at the time.
I do, because 2014, 2015 was, I think, when Duo, the idea of a dual screen phone started to, you know, they were starting to think about that kind of form factor. So I do wonder if that had a play in the death of McLaren. It's like everything comes back to the Duo eventually.
It really does. I mean, and that's why, it makes it fun when people talk about, you know, it being canceled after version 1 and all this. It's like, they know, they have their expectations. But this is sort of something like conceptually that Panos is behind. Like, this is like his main, this is up there with Surface Pro, I think, for him in terms of category defining new device. It's gone through a hell of a ride to get to where it is today. And we've talked about that before when people say, like, you know, it's not a great phone. And we'll point out that technically it wasn't meant to be a phone. It was meant to be literally a foldable Windows Surface for your pocket. And where it is today it's very different. So that's why I'm really interested in seeing what version 2 is, now that they have this idea in their head that, like, okay, well, now we have to make it more of a phone. So let's make it more phone-ish. So there we go. All right, enough of reminiscing about old stuff, which we can do all day with Microsoft. Let's talk about the today and the future, specifically Windows 10 news. So 21H1 is now available in the beta channel. You have some news around this, when we can expect it. So tell us what's new with it, and then also go into the new dev build that was released today.
So yes, 21H1, this is the elusive release that Microsoft refused to talk about for the longest of times, even though we've sort of known exactly what it was going to be since, I think, October, November time. But 21H1 is now official. It will be coming this spring. And as Dan mentioned, it is now available in the Insider Beta channel. There's not a lot in it. If you thought 20H2 was small, 21H1 is a whole nother level of small. So far, there's only 3 notable changes in it, one of which is interesting to this audience, our audience, which is they are finally adding the capability of using an external Windows Hello webcam on a laptop that has Windows Hello built in. Believe it or not, you couldn't do this before. This was one of the issues I ran into, and I think I mentioned it on the podcast around Christmas time. When you use the Surface Book or any laptop with Windows Hello built in, connected to a dock to extend towards a larger monitor, if you have an external Windows Hello peripheral, you cannot use that peripheral if the lid is closed, which negates the entire reason you'd want to plug in a Windows Hello webcam to a dock to use with your Surface laptop or whatever. But now they're finally adding that option so that you can use an external Windows Hello camera with the lid closed when you're connected to a dock and stuff. So that is great. I mean, it's 2 months too late for me because I've already returned to the dock and everything else because that was a terrible experience I had. But yeah, they're adding that in 21H1. There's a couple of other changes for enterprises, which I'm not going to go into because I don't really remember what they are. But yes, regarding the timeline for this, as it's in beta testing as of right now, so if you want to upgrade to it, you can. If you're running that version 2004 or 20H2, the update will install like a cumulative update. So it's not a full-blown Windows release. That, of course, is being reserved for 20H2, which is expected to be the larger Sun Valley stuff later this year. And I'm told 21H1 will be done in April and will probably start rolling out in May. It is a standard H1 release, which means it will be supported like any other H1 release. It will be supported for 18 months with servicing updates, which means if you're an enterprise who wants the longest 30 months of support, you'll have to wait for the H2 release later in the year. And that's basically everything you need to know about 21H1. Not a big update at all. I mean, we're still, April's not it's still a couple of months away. We might see a couple of additional things put into this release before it's done, but I'm doubting it. I think Microsoft is saving the big stuff for the bigger release in the fall, which, makes sense. Sun Valley is supposed to be this sort of big bang, Windows is back release, so they're probably saving the biggest stuff for that.
I did install this last night on the Lenovo Titanium, which is such a fun laptop. And it was, this is it felt like a cumulative patch. It was so small. The download itself took maybe 2 minutes. And, I don't have a tremendous bandwidth where I am. And then it installed probably another 3 minutes and then rebooted. And the whole process took less than 10 minutes, probably even 8. And this wasn't a, that laptop isn't tremendously powerful. So it's a very minor update. And I've literally noticed, of course, no differences in anything, which is good, in the sense of a lot of people just want Windows to be more reliable, consistent, fix, and all that kind of stuff. And so this update is probably for you because it sure didn't make anything worse, which is always a good thing, at least not yet. But I think, as you mentioned, that this is really setting the groundwork for Sun Valley.
I have some internal documentation for 21H1 on desktop, which literally says this is a scoped release, which reduces risk when updating and does not take away from Sun Valley. I butchered that that reading of the internal description, but there is an internal description. Tightly scoped and complementary to Sun Valley. So it's not designed to sort of take away from Sun Valley. And also they're not allowed to introduce any features that might postpone Sun Valley development. So essentially 21H1 is as small as it can possibly be because resources are busy dealing and building with Sun Valley. So 21H1, it's finally technically on its way. Nothing too exciting, but again, this is all expected. We've known for a while now that this was going to be a very small update. But Microsoft...
And I think I was just going to say, I think it's safe for people listening to this if you could probably go ahead and install this on your main computer. There's the risk level here. It's in beta for obvious reasons. That's just the chain. It's going to go beta and then it'll go to release preview in a couple of weeks. But honestly, you can go install this today. I don't think you're going to risk your any stability on your device. Moreover, you can then get some of the new refreshed inbox apps. There's not a ton there either, but there are things like your phone has been getting a lot of more features now. There's on some of my devices, I have a contacts option, syncs your contacts over, which is kind of nice. And I believe there's a new setting coming forward to control the settings of your phone from your phone, which is kind of fun. So you may be able to get into some of that stuff, which is nice. But I guess this segues now to the dev build that's coming out.
So yes, this week they also released a new dev channel build 21318. Nothing really new in it. There's a minor change to the clipboard history UI where they've now added a paste as plain text feature. So by default, the clipboard will save the formatting of any text you copy, which can be useful, but oftentimes isn't. So you can now paste as plain text into text fields using the clipboard UI, which is quite nice. They also, and I think we've got this in the show notes, but I'll mention it here as well. They also mention in the changelog for some reason, a brand new app from the Microsoft Garage team, called Journal. Now, this is a UWP app that's sort of built with the idea of being a virtual journal. And funnily enough, I think Panos Panay even tweeted about this. I have a feeling this is using tech that was being built for Andromeda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really do. And it's really, really cool. It really is. You can do sort of take notes and you can star things and it automatically does it in the actual page you're writing in and stuff. It's really, really clever.
That works on ARM64 too, for those curious. That was the first thing. I mean, you did that. There's an article on Windows Central that you did talking about the history of Andromeda and how we got from that to Duo.
Yep.
And you focused a lot of that on literally an app called Journal.
Yep, I did.
Which was sort of the main function of this pocketable surface. This idea you'd open it up and you'd have the pen and you would use it for... And Panos has been obsessed with this idea of a digital journal for a long time.
Yeah.
It goes back to Surface Mini. That was the main idea behind Surface Mini, which is why I didn't have a keyboard. And it was designed in more the portrait landscape instead of landscape orientation. So they've been kind of obsessed with this idea of creating the perfect note-taking system And I guess a lot of people are going to be like, well, we already have OneNote.
Yeah.
And we have and there was another garage app called Plumbago, which is a terrible name, but we have to take a step back. Garage apps, by definition, are side projects done by Microsoft people who work at Microsoft as sort of side projects. I think they do it on their own time as well. In fact, part of their job, their allocated time to work on side projects. And you see this as a garage app. And the point of it is to get it out there, gain feedback, and if it's popular and a good idea, it then moves on to a full production app. A perfect example of this is Microsoft Aero, which if you've never heard of, it's because it goes by the name Microsoft Launcher today, which is what we use on Android.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like the app looks beautiful as well. It's clear they've put a lot of attention into this thing, which is really nice. This app would be amazing on Duo if it ran Windows. It really would. Unfortunately, it is available only for Windows. I say unfortunately, as if it's actually nice. It's only available on Windows.
It's on Android.
Yeah. No, but so it doesn't. I don't think it syncs with OneNote or anything. It's its own app. But you can sign in with the Microsoft account, and I assume that syncs across devices as well, which is nice. But this new journal app, it's available in the Microsoft Store. You can go and download it today and try it out. If you have a tablet and you're quite a heavy ink user, I think this app will really complement your workflow.
Someone's asking about how they thought Whiteboard was the extension of Andromeda, but from my understanding, that came out of, I believe, the Office team and was more tightly paired to Surface Hub and the idea of remote collaboration.
There was a time during the self-hosting phase of Andromeda where they replaced the journal app with the Microsoft Whiteboard app, because I think Whiteboard adopted a lot of the stuff they were working on for Journal. And internal feedback suggested that not everybody was comfortable with the idea of having two different pages. They just liked one canvas that they could scroll around, which is what Whiteboard is. This journal app is not Whiteboard. Whiteboard is an educational focused tool at this point.
Right, it was also education market.
Yeah, and also the thing with Whiteboard is that you can have multiple people on one board at the same time, whereas I don't think this journal app does that.
I was going to say Whiteboard is really about that collaborate. That's why I kind of don't use Whiteboard. It's really rad if you're working with other people, but I don't.
Yeah, weirdly enough, for the pen workspace thing on Windows 10, really, it's built to point to Whiteboard, and you can't change that. I would much rather be able to choose OneNote or even this journal app, but for some reason it's Whiteboard and Whiteboard only, which I have no use for. I'm not inking with other people. It's nice. It's a nice app, but
you don't get together with your friends on Friday night and play ink with each other.
No, I do not. No, but this journal app, if you have a device with pen support, definitely check it out. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. So that is the current status of Windows. There was also in this dev build some stuff with ARM64 and progress around that. I haven't really been diving into it because the last time I tried it, I use the Pro X as kind of one of my main devices. Although lately I've been so inundated with laptops, I haven't had the chance. But I kind of don't like putting dev builds on devices I do use.
Yeah,
that I rely on. Plus, I hate the idea with dev. There are a lot of features that get tested there, A/B testing.
I know,
and that doesn't bother me that it's A/B. I understand conceptually they have the reasons for doing that. That's fine. But I don't like the idea that I may get a feature and I really like it,
and it goes
but
away.
It doesn't ship.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the idea. A lot of people have strong feelings about that new, I forgot what it's even called, the weather news widget that sits in the start bar. I think it's awesome. It's also purely optional, and now they're making it more configurable. In fact, this update allows you to resize it and do some more stuff with it. I think it's cool, but I almost don't want to start using it just to be told we decided not to.
Yeah.
Although I was going to do a screenshot the other day about how Windows 10 has turned to Windows 10 weather, because they have weather on the MSN page. You have weather in the search area. You can have weather in this taskbar area. There's literally a little weather. And someone's like, "How much weather do you need?" And I'm like, to be honest, it's sort of I have this problem too, and I know a lot of people do, where you have time everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've God knows I have fancy watches that I love to talk about, but half the time I look at them, I don't know the time. I look at it, all right. And I'm like, wait, what is the actual time? And I feel like that same way with the weather. So I also had a fun discussion about that with people online. Apparently, some people live in very climate stable regions where that is their temperatures and weather are very consistent year round. So for them, they don't check weather and don't kind of care about weather. They're like, just look outside. Where I am, it shifts like 30 to 40 degrees sometimes in a single day, and we'll get like a blizzard or a snowstorm, and it's very wacky weather. So having this everywhere kind of is important. So, I guess it depends on where you live and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Microsoft Edge. So hopefully you're all using Edge. There's a lot of good stuff happening there. One of the biggest things, of course, is the password sync that now works with Authenticator on Android and iOS. And I only bring this up because LastPass made this kind of really boneheaded move this week. It was just poor timing, I think, where they have a free version of LastPass where you were able to use it for personal reasons on like a computer and a smartphone, and it would sync between the two. And now they're taking it away in the sense that you can use it on a smartphone or your computer, but not both. If you want that, you got to start paying for it. And it's like, okay, I kind of understand that. I've been using NPass for a long time, but NPass started charging too. But I'm grandfathered in, so it's free. So I primarily use NPass with a mix of Authenticator. I'm slowly switching over. But, Microsoft's solution is basically completely free and works on iOS, Android, and your PC. Now, I think it's fair to say LastPass is way more advanced, has more advanced features, as you would hope. They've been out for a very long time, where what Microsoft is doing is very new. We don't know the roadmap and the end goal for what Microsoft's password management system is going to be. They haven't shared that. I don't know if they're trying to reach parity with, LastPass or NPass or all those, but they are making quite a lot of progress. So I get for some people who pay for LastPass or whatever they want to use, these aren't feature parity. I will say for a lot of normal people, the majority of people out there, what Microsoft's doing here is actually good enough for most. One of the big features that's come now is third-party themes are now available in the Edge store. One of them, and we linked to it in the article on this topic, is a pure black theme, which is kind of really nice. If you're on an OLED computer, especially, but even not, because right now it's a dark gray, and there's an internal debate. A lot of people have strong feelings on this. I'm sure Zach does. For your dark mode, is dark mode dark gray? Or is dark mode pure black? Even Twitter has they're starting to offer these two choices now because people have very strong opinions on it.
So I used to be team pure black, but these days I think I'm more dark gray. I think it depends on the technology of the screen as well. If it's OLED, I prefer pure black. But on an LCD, which is what most Windows PCs are, I definitely prefer dark, like a very dark gray. But yeah, I know that is a touchy subject for a lot of people.
Oh, I just realized. Sorry, we missed the market share story. We'll do that one after this on Edge.
Sure,
don't worry. Yeah, I agree. So I think like dark mode as defined as black looks awesome, but the problem becomes defining edges and areas.
Yeah,
you can get quickly lost with multiple windows open. So it kind of depends also how you run the app. If you're running the app full screen, it's a little bit easier to manage. But if you're running it as windowed, you start to lose the edges of where the app ends in your background and another app begins. But that's what's cool about skinning and themes, right? So you have the option. Adaptive notification requests. This is, again, we're talking, some of these are in beta, some of these are in dev, depends. So basically, this has to do with feedback. If people go to websites and they keep hitting, when you get that pop-up notification, even we do it, right? Would you like to receive notifications from the site? And people are hitting, no. Apparently, if enough people do that, Microsoft's going to basically go like, all right, no one really wants to use this. So by default, we're not going to allow them to even ask you and kind of basically block it, which is part of the whole kind of theme in Edge, which is Microsoft is trying to make it less intrusive, more privacy based, more user friendly, because there's always a tension between what the web can push in terms of features and, ads, for instance, or news management, and shopping and all this kind of stuff, and privacy. So that's a cool one. The big announcement this week was Kids Mode, and that just triggered a bunch of Windows Phone users. They're like, oh, Kids Corner, they're going to cancel it. Listen, Kids Corner was actually a rad idea. The problem was there wasn't enough market share for Windows Phone to eventually justify the feature. Had Windows Phone caught on and been a strong third-party contender or third ecosystem contender for smartphones, I think Kids Mode would have been awesome. It was definitely ahead of its time. That doesn't mean the idea behind Kids Mode is, or Kids Corner, it was called back then, but for Kids Mode, I don't think is a bad idea, especially because parents are looking for more and more ways to sort of control what kids, especially the young ones, see on the web. Um, you know, I just think of adult material. I couldn't imagine being a parent. Like when I
I
was
know.
growing up, to get adult material on the web was hard. Like it just wasn't there because when
Yeah.
I started on the internet, there was no World Wide Web. Like
Hmm.
that it didn't exist. Like, but now today, I mean, good Lord, you just like type in the words and it's just like, oh yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a way to help parents manage that stuff. And I think it's kind of a big deal. And I think in this case, the market share, the value is definitely there. It's Windows. We'll talk about market share shortly. So I think this is actually kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, it's really nice to see Microsoft differentiating Edge from Chrome because I think for a long while
Yes.
there was no real incentive to use Edge over Chrome other than it's Chrome but with a Microsoft logo. Now they're actually building in features that are unique to Edge and aren't shared with Chromium, which is really nice because that differentiates the browser. And I think what Microsoft is doing here is building a version of Chrome but with privacy as the top priority. And it's really, I think they're really nailing it on the head with a lot of these features. Kids mode, the notification request stuff. It's all real good stuff. The password manager, the password generator, which is built in. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. It really is. So it's funny. We in our we have a group, Windows Central group chat. Richard was complaining about the settings app and how it says you should use Microsoft Edge, and I was like, yeah, but why would you use any other browser anyway? Edge is clearly the best browser out there. And to be fair, like back in the day, that would have been a funny joke, but I actually think it's genuinely a real statement these days. Edge is now Chrome, but better in a lot of ways, I think. There's no compatibility issues between the browsers. And in most cases, Edge puts privacy before, Chrome does. And I really, really like the new Edge. If you haven't tried the new Edge, I suggest... I think Edge's biggest downfall at this point is that it's still called Edge, and a lot of people assume Edge is a bad browser. They should have rebranded it when they had the chance, but I think it's too late at this point. But yeah, the new Edge is absolutely fantastic. It really is.
They are making a ton of progress, adding a lot of features and just kind of really innovating around it. And you're right. Another one. So this one is removes suggested searches. So this is actually part of Chrome. And it's just a feature that's basically been now integrated into Edge. So it's not like Microsoft invented this, but still a nice feature. What it means is when you go to the Omni search bar, the Omni bar, it's both your address bar and search bar. And that's how I use it too. If you go in there and you start typing a website, you'll have your history up there. And before you had it, you could like right click on it and like remove. It was like a couple extra steps. But now when it starts bringing up suggestions based on your history, there'll be just an X there. And you could just hit the X and it removes it from your history and your suggested links, which is a good thing if you went to a website once and I've had this happen before, like, he keeps bringing up that website, but he really wanted a different one, but it's always there. And like, I never want to go back to that website. I don't need it there. So this gives you a little bit more control there. There's probably way more stuff we're definitely missing. They've been really tweaking visuals in the app. You can do things now like put into the main menu bar, on top. You can put things like your history, which is really nice, because history is becoming more important, especially if you sync it across devices, which is off by default on a lot of devices. I know, and I'm really testing Microsoft's system here because I have so many laptops and phones. So you have history all recently closed and tabs from other devices. Yeah. And so when I bring up tabs from other devices, I have there's like 8 or 9 devices right now on mine.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And you can control that, obviously. But now when you pop out history, it used to be sort of like almost a full screen flyout. Now it's a small flyout, which is just more manageable. They also did that for collections. But again, some of this is A/B testing. I just hit my collections on this build for dev, and it does takes up the side of the screen. They have a new version of collections where it's a small flyout, which is, I think, way better. It doesn't take up shift over what you're looking at, and it's way less intrusive. So there's all sorts of these kind of cool features that are coming to Edge. I think they're doing a really nice job of. But yeah, it does beg the question. You know, the reason why a lot of people listening to this are probably on Chrome or even Opera is less about pure allegiance to the brand, and even less about them being even able to point out specific reasons. If you ask most people why they use a browser, they're not going to be like, well, you see, the latest version of Chrome 82 does this, and it uses SSL and encryption this and TD. Like, almost no one does that except for the people who develop it. Number one reason is going to be you're just familiar with the browser. You just know where everything is. You just know how it all works. Second one is going to be your passwords, or just there, and you don't want to go through the process of exporting and importing. That's where we brought up that conversation about why, password management is kind of a big deal. That's removing a big hurdle for people to switch. There was also some complaints this week you're talking about with the search, and they recommend Edge.
Yeah,
I really don't see this as ads.
I know. No,
like,
yeah, I'm the
this
same.
Is another. Yeah, some people are like, because Samsung does this, Apple does this. If you have the iPhone and iOS 14 is loaded with quote unquote ads, where it's just Apple. If you go into settings, it'll be like, hey, you can try our new iCloud feature or this and that. I get how people may not like that. I also don't see how these systems are becoming so complicated, so complex with new services and features, how these companies are supposed to notify customers that this thing even exists as an option. I get for people listening to this podcast, you're in the 1%. You're listening to a podcast about Microsoft products. Like, we know, like, you, a lot of you even know more about this stuff than we do, right? You're part of that really, really tiny demographic. Most people don't know about this stuff, aren't following it. So I don't see it as necessarily wrong that these companies want to be like, hey, try this feature / just click this link or scan this QR code with your phone to get it. I don't know how else you get around that. So
there are definitely good ways and bad ways of doing it. Microsoft sort of treads the line in a lot of cases. In the settings app, I think it's fine, especially since there's only advertising Microsoft's own products. But the start menu on Windows 10, there's a suggestions thing that sometimes shows up, and that's more often than not a Microsoft product. They're usually recommending a third-party app. I generally don't like that. I turn that off. But Samsung, I think, is the worst. Samsung will put ads in the notification center, which is, I think, a total no. I don't mind it in the settings app, advertising your own services. I don't. But if Microsoft were putting ads in the Action Center, that would be okay. Microsoft, that's a bit too much. But in the settings app, I think is absolutely fine. Especially, like I said, if it's advertising their own products, I absolutely don't mind Microsoft saying, "Hey, you should download the new Edge," or "Hey, you should try out Office 365." I think that's absolutely fine because a company should be allowed to talk to notify users of its other services on its own products. I think that's more than fine as long as it's not intrusive, which I don't think it is on Windows 10. But yeah, like I said, there are definitely good ways and bad ways of doing it, and I think Samsung's the worst. Microsoft sort of treads the line with the suggestions at the start, and then Apple's the best at it because most of their notifications are either hidden in settings, or sometimes it'll pop up the Tips app that says you should try this, which you can turn those off, and that's fine.
Yeah, and Samsung, you can do this too, but yeah, Samsung is a little bit more aggressive because they actually often show up as notifications, which is really infuriating. No one wants to be like, feel the phone vibrating and a ding go off and like, oh, what's this?
You're holding your $2,000 Fold 2 and it says buy the new Note 20. It's like, no.
yeah, exactly. And like this is actually one of the exciting areas of where AI could become really useful.
Yeah.
Because it would be nice, like Microsoft shouldn't be telling you about Office 365 if you already have an Office 365 account. You shouldn't be notified to use the new Edge if you're already using Edge, right? Like, and this is where I think AI is going to get smart in terms of targeting people appropriately. But they all do this, right? And Apple, for everybody that puts Apple on a pedestal, Apple's been doing it like crazy on all their devices and everything like that. So it is what it is. But that's your Edge news for this week. Let's talk about, Windows reportedly lost almost 5% market share in 2020, according to IDC. So, I don't have any reasons not to believe IDC's numbers. IDC is pretty well known in this industry. They've been covering market share for a long time. What's really kind of interesting here is not so much, the market share for Windows it was always high, right? And I guess a 5% drop seems kind of a lot, but really this gets really okay. I was going to do an article on this, and I may still, so this will be the audio version of that. Computers and laptops and PCs, as much as I love talking about them, I've said this before, it's effectively a flat market. That is, most people have computers at this point, and the upgrade cycle for computers is long. It's like 5 to 6 years. Because as cool as it is, as we think, like Intel's got 11th gen right now, or AMD has just released its new 5000 mobile series, most consumers just don't care or even know what you're talking about. And I bring this up with the M1 processor all the time. That's such inside nerd stuff. I have a few friends that use Macs and Apples exclusively, and I'm like, hey, I got the new M1 Mac, and they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And you always have to keep in mind here that this is what you consider important and fascinating is a very niche and flat market. Smartphones for a long time were not a flat market. They were a growth market. That is, back in 2012, it was just going up and up and up. And that's because most people around the world did not have smartphones. And then once people got them in the major markets, Western markets, the push became what Nokia was going after, which is the next billion emerging markets where they were trying to really bring down the price of these devices. Again, this is where Android and Windows Phone excelled. That is now flattening out too, right? Upgrade cycles for smartphones have gone past 3 years now. That is, most people are now going every 4 years. And that may sound crazy to a lot of people on this podcast who upgrade every year. God knows Zach and I are always upgrading every couple months, right? But we're definitely the minority here. I know a lot of people on very old iPhones, Android devices. Yes. They're like, I know someone on like a Galaxy, was it S7 or something like that? It works. That's what they'll tell you. It works. It holds a charge. And you even see people carry around battery packs, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So that's a difference. And wearables is an interesting market. That's a growth market. It's a slow growth market, but it's definitely one where there's a lot of investment going on. So I bring that up here with PC stuff because obviously in 2020, there was the pandemic. The pandemic did drive sales of new computers. It's not expected to last for obvious reasons, but one of the important areas where this growth was schools and education. Schools had already allocated budgets and money and had devices for students, but they would share the devices. So not every kid got a laptop. That laptop was shared between students, and that's how schools were able to save on budgets. And they often in the US were going for Chromebooks, Chrome OS, because it was cheaper and it's actually easier to manage. Windows is still strong there. Windows is still very strong in Europe. Apple's rate there has been kind of going down and wish-washing because Apple devices are very expensive to purchase as well as support, and they're not as good as Windows and everything. And what we ended up seeing was according to IDC here, was a big bump in Chrome OS, which again makes sense because if you're a school and now kids got to learn from home, all these kids need a computer. And one of the things we saw was schools, districts buy more Chrome devices because it was the most affordable, cheapest option and easiest to manage. And so that's what we're seeing here. And that's the biggest news, I think, is one, Chrome OS did very well for 2020, which I just explained, I think makes perfectly good sense. As far as Windows not doing well, this is the argument for Windows 10X, which we've been talking about forever. Yeah. This is why 10X is such a priority for them, because Microsoft should be there, and with 10X, they could be there. And they would be able to offer even more features, like eventually support for Win32 classic apps, should administrators want that option on a device. I think perhaps the biggest news is not so much that Windows lost some market share because of this, it's that Chrome OS has more market share than Mac OS now. Let me repeat that. Chrome OS, this is worldwide. Worldwide. We're not talking about the US, so don't give me this is worldwide. Chrome OS has more market share than Mac OS. And I keep bringing this up because I think a lot of people are shocked by that, and you shouldn't be. Apple and Mac OS have always commanded way more attention, especially from the elite media in Western markets, than is reflected in the actual usage by normal people out there. They're just expensive devices, and most people don't go get them. And macOS market share has been and will be, I'm saying, consistently flat, partly because, again, it's not a growth market. A lot of people who are going to get the new M1 Mac are not Windows users or even Chrome OS users. They are existing Apple users who are hitting that 5-year mark. Now we're seeing, oh, there's a brand new Mac. They finally fixed a stupid keyboard that kept breaking all the time. And they want that. And that's where you're going to see a lot of that churn. And it's internal churn. I don't care how awesome you think the M1 chip is. It's not going to budge this market share. It's just not. Most people aren't like, oh, yeah, $2,000, $1,500. Let me go buy that new Mac because it's faster. So I think that's the bigger news. Now, it's not all bad for Apple because what Apple knows, and you should know, their future is not Mac OS.
No, yeah.
It's iOS.
Yeah.
Now, iOS, if you threw that into that worldwide market share, would totally shift things. The iPad has way more cross-generational interest because the Mac OS is going to be bought by, kind of elite YouTube creators, the college kids, all that. iPad, though, is used by kids. Mm-hmm. It's used by young adults. It's used by middle-aged adults, and it's used by seniors and older people. It crosses all those genres. And because of that, Apple knows its focus, its strength is in iOS. And iOS does have more market share than macOS. And so I don't find any of these numbers particularly too crazy or out there. But I do think the Windows numbers do justify what we're talking about Windows 10X. And Zach, now I'll pause if you have thoughts on that.
My only thought is, I thought Microsoft last year said that they had seen the most usage from Windows in a long while because of the pandemic. So I don't know how that aligns with losing
because
5%
that's
market. Oh, I see. Is it? Okay. Okay, it makes sense. Yeah.
And you think about it, enterprise saw a big uptick even before the pandemic because Windows 7 end of life cycle was coming to an end. A lot of companies had to go buy new Windows 10 hardware. So we saw that tick, and we've been talking about that forever. We're like, that's cool. Market share is up, PC sales are up. That's not going to last forever.
No,
so that was starting to already tip down, but then the pandemic happened, kind of gave it a little extra oomph. But listen, as the pandemic winds down, you're not going to see this for Chrome OS, Mac OS, and Windows. People aren't just going to be buying as much laptops.
I definitely predict headlines that say things like, Windows PC market share is declining significantly. Even maybe the same will happen with Mac and Chrome. This stuff will decline because the pandemic will eventually end. Fingers crossed, and things will go back to normal, and Windows will return to this state of almost irrelevancy in most people's lives and used as a tool for those who still need it. Which is Sun Valley basically exists because of the pandemic. Microsoft sat down, they could see that people were starting to use PCs again in their day-to-day lives at home and whatnot, and they decided to ship an update which would reinvigorate that UX. The question now is, are they going to be able to deliver it in time before that's no longer necessary? Because that Sun Valley is expected at the end of this year, and the pandemic is, I wouldn't say it's winding down, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but it's certainly in a lot of areas now, they're looking towards, vaccinations and essentially returning to normal. And it'll be interesting to see what comes first.
So the good news here is, although we are, quote unquote, returning to normal, that is also known as the new normal. So it's definitely true that as things get better, but things have also dramatically changed. And one of the things that's been proven and was accelerated was this idea of remote learning and remote work. And so a lot of businesses were already dipping their toes in this. Some were reversing trends. IBM was going to reverse their trend where they closed their offices and you could work from home, and then they're starting to reverse that. But this has kind of proven that a lot of companies can function with people working from home versus this idea of if you allow people to work from home, they're going to be lazy and not as productive. And it's driven really this acceleration. So the good news is that a lot of that will remain because it's a cost benefit analysis for companies. It's just cheaper to have people work from home than renting office space. There will be and some companies are already toying with this. Some companies are like, well, we're going to allow people to come back to the office and give an option. And there's already controversy about that because then there's this perception that if you go to the office, you're a better, more dedicated worker versus the person working from home. It's going to create that schism. So a lot of this stuff hasn't settled, but I think it's true also that you're going to have way more remote workers, which means things like webcams, displays, proper computers, microphones. You're going to continue to see investment there because then that will become part of this normal kind of upgrade cycle. I don't think as good as webcams are, they're as good as they could be, right?
Yeah.
That was a category that's, we're talking about Logitech. We both use the Brio on here. It can do 4K video, but there's no infrastructure that handles 4K video for streaming.
No, yeah, you're right.
As far as I know. I mean, I know Skype doesn't. And, in terms of innovation, Logitech literally releases a new webcam every 4 years, basically. It's a very and even Microsoft stopped doing the live cam stuff. But you're going to start to see more of that happening. In fact, there's an announcement next week that may be a new webcam. So
not from
in fact,
Microsoft.
It's actually not from Microsoft. But I have a new webcam in this box here. I can't tell you who it's from. Turn into next week's podcast where I'll be using it. You can see it in action. But there, so yeah, you're going to see continued innovation here. But you're right. There probably will be declines in sales of this stuff because, as I earlier mentioned, this is a flat kind of market. So it's even with smartphones. But my second point is this is why you see Microsoft pushing things like dual screen devices, which they will return to. The whole point of that, and you're seeing 5G laptops now, is because these companies are looking for ways to offer new experiences that previous PCs could not offer. And for some people, that's a big deal. The ability to ink and have a touch display is a big deal for a lot of people. It's allowed people to do things they couldn't do before. That's kind of why Intel, Microsoft, and Windows do these things. And this is what ticks me off about the Apple MacBook Pro. It's a great straight up standard laptop. Don't get me wrong. But it also doesn't allow you, it's just a straight up laptop. No touch, no inking, no 4G, no 5G. There's no Windows Hello, facial recognition. I've been talking a lot about a lot of the new laptops now have a time of flight sensor. I put a video up on Twitter of that. I'll be talking a lot more about this technology. But when I was cooking dinner the other night, I had the titanium on my counter with a recipe. And your hands are getting dirty and all that. The screen, and when I would walk away, the screen would turn off automatically and lock. But as I walked back in front of it, the screen automatically lit up, logged me in, and I was back looking at my recipe without having to touch the device. That's actually built more for security reasons, actually. So if you're in an office and you walk away from your computer, it locks. But this is super convenient technology that's allowing computers to sort of be used in more places. I didn't want to use my dirty hand to go use a fingerprint reader on the computer, right? So you're going to start to see a lot more of this stuff happening. But that's why you see this kind of crazy innovation that happens on PC.
I've heard that Microsoft might be building that kind of functionality into Windows 10 using just standard Windows Hello webcams, which I think it could be done, right? Because infrared just needs to detect someone standing in front of it to come on and then log you in with the bioauthentication. So yeah, that could be a some value feature that doesn't require dedicated hardware, which would be really nice. Other than Windows Hello itself. Yeah,
the benefit of time of flight sensors are it works almost like sonar. So it's not a camera. Right. And so you can actually close the camera on the computer and it still works. And so that's what's kind of neat about it. It's also tied to Intel 11th Gen and the chip there to be very offload the power and usage of the CPU to make it happen. And when I talk about this feature, I'm only talking about Intel. AMD doesn't support this. And it's one reason, and I'm seeing a lot more of it. It's mostly business laptops. The X1 Nano has it, the new Carbon, I believe, the titanium. And we'll talk about the Vio Z has it now. It's a really cool feature. And it's one that, I had an Apple fan argue with me about this. About how he thought it was useless and gimmicky. And I was just like,
Are you crazy?
And he brought up masks. He's like, yeah, but what if you're wearing a mask? Which is like, why would I be wearing a mask in my kitchen while I'm cooking, right? And I was like, but even still, if I was wearing a mask, it has a fingerprint reader. So I
Yeah.
could just use that,
Mm.
you know? So, and then this is an Apple user, like, who obviously uses an iPhone. How dare you? I don't use my iPhone 12 out in public anymore because it's so annoying because of
Yeah.
Face ID.
Yeah.
Where good devices, in my opinion, like Samsung, have both fingerprint reader and facial recognition, even if their facial recognition isn't secure. I don't know. I thought that was a really ridiculous argument. Because as soon as Apple invents this, which they're going to, of course,
Invents.
yeah, you know, it's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as soon as they bring even Face ID to the Mac, people are going to go crazy over it, as they should. I mean, Face ID works very well. Windows Hello works very well. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anywho, that's the see, that was the slash rant of the Windows reportedly the market share. Let's talk about software tips. You already mentioned Journal,
Yep.
so you can go get that. You mentioned it with the dev release notes, but it's not part of the
It
dev.
runs on any version of Windows 10.
Yeah, you can just go to the store and get Journal now on any device you want. So go try that out. Two other things I want to talk about quickly. Modern Scroll Bar. This is an extension for Edge that you can just go to and search extensions. It's two separate words again. Modern Scroll Bar. It's a GitHub project. It's open source. This is cool. So it was Derek Kessler, someone who works in our company, called this out last night. When I shared a screenshot of Edge, he cringed at the old school scroll bar that was still being used, which didn't dawn on me because I'm bad at this stuff. But I was like, oh yeah, you're right. It stands out. It's white and it's like
it's gross. It's so bad.
Yeah, the scroll bars have never really been updated. By the way, have they been updated in Windows 10X? Are they?
No, they're still the old ones. The reason for that is it's Chromium's fault. It's not Windows' fault, because Windows does have updated modern scroll bars. If you want to use it, developers can tap in and use those newer scroll bars. Okay. But the Edge team hasn't, and Chromium I don't think supports it. Chromium used to have a feature in Flags where you could enable like a modern scroll bar built into the actual client, but Google, I guess, removed it from Chromium itself, and so you can't do that no more. But I would love to see Microsoft build its own Edge, modern scroll bars. Because you're right, the scroll bars, you look at them, they look like they're from Windows 95. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And like I said, it didn't even dawn on me until someone pointed it out. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Like in a world where everyone's using trackpads and touchscreens and whatnot, we don't need the thick sort of grey scroll bar anymore. Like it served its purpose for the time in which people were using mice, and even today, like I think people are smart enough now to realize that you can get things like hover scroll bars, which only show up when your mouse is on the web page, and even then they're not like these obnoxiously white thick bars. They are just like, it's a small little pill that you can grab and scroll with and stuff. So because Mac OS, Apple does this perfectly on its platform, and Windows this is another area where Windows definitely needs to catch up.
So if you want to solve that problem, modern scroll bar, like I said, it's an extension installed in Edge, and boom, it changes your scroll bars to this kind of pill modern looking design and makes it blend in, and they're almost kind of hard to see. I don't know if I have them on this page. There we go. Okay,
good job at selling it.
No, it's different. You know what it is? It blends in so nicely. It takes you a second to sort of, but I've literally been using it for about 15 minutes. So I don't have too much experience, but it's free. I think a lot of people will like the look of this. Second one is called Modern Flyouts. This is in the Microsoft Store. That's a single word, modern, no space, flyouts. It's in preview. We're about to cover it. Modern Flyouts replaces the volume and multimedia pop-up window. It's like when you change your volume or you're playing music. This gives a modern flyout, as the name implies. It allows translucency, so you can, it has a slider depending on how much you want it. You can make it completely opaque or not. And it's more full-featured with more options, album art, and all this kind of stuff. And you can control what shows up there and all this kind of stuff. Again, a free, as far as I know, app in the Microsoft Store. Should work on all devices. If you combine both of those, I tell you, it kind of It makes a big difference. Like I think if you're looking for that more modern look, and I haven't noticed any side effects to this stuff, especially because of the extension. I don't think it would cause any issue. But those are my two software tips. If you're looking to make your Windows 10 a little bit more Sun Valley-ish,
Yeah.
I think these are good ones.
Yeah, I actually do think with Sun Valley they're updating those flyouts anyway, so you might not even need
Right.
this tool in 6 months' time. But for now, it makes it look much nicer, and yes, because the flyout, the volume thing on the screen that comes up is from Windows 8. That's a Windows 8 UI,
Yeah.
and the flyout on the taskbar is not great. So yeah, I think this replaces both of those, and it's really nice.
And I think if you throw in Taskbar X, which Zach has
Yes.
covered even on our YouTube
Yeah.
channel, basically that just centers the icons on your the bar. I love that thing. It makes on a 38-inch widescreen monitor, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
But I've been even using it on my laptops now just because I prefer the look of it.
Mhm.
That too is coming to Windows 10X.
Yes.
Not to Sun Valley though. correct?
Well, we don't know for sure. I think there might be an option built in. I think you might be able to optionally make your taskbar icon centered, because I did hear they were bringing most of the 10X features, not most, a number of the 10X features over to desktop, and I believe that centering the taskbar is one of them. But of course, we'll have to wait and see if that actually shows up.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just a little change. I mean, obviously Mac OS has been doing this for years, but I
Yeah.
just think in terms of usability, it's just way easier to have centered icons.
It's so funny. Like, a lot of people are so averse to this design choice. Like, centered icons, it makes no sense because your icons now
Weird.
move around. It's like, no, they don't really move around. They still show up in the same order and stuff. It's just things stay centered. Yes, they will shift over here and there to keep everything centered. But when you're using a PC, your mouse is, for the most part, hanging around in the sort of center. It's way quicker to just drop your cursor to the bottom of the display rather than having to move all the way to the far left of the screen, especially like Dan said on like a 30-inch ultra wide or whatever. Like it's insane to have them left aligned. Put them in the center. It makes more sense. That's why if you look at a phone, the dock on the bottom of the screen, it's centered. You don't see icons left aligned on iPhone or Android. It makes more sense to have them all centered. And the fact that Windows still has them left aligned is it's a leftover old design trend from Windows 95. Another leftover thing, it's always been left aligned because back then that's sort of what made sense. But as modern workflows have been introduced, the likes of iPad and Android and iOS and whatnot, centered icons now actually makes more sense for most people. So Windows is actually playing catch up in this department.
Yep. I love it. It's hard to go back. Hopefully Microsoft will build it into later versions of Windows. But yeah, so there's our software tips. Let's move on to the Xbox headset. So Zach, why don't you tell us about this $99 release, when it's coming out, what we know about it. Did the Surface team help make this?
I actually don't know the answer to that question, but yes, this is the Xbox wireless headset. It is a Bluetooth/Xbox wireless headset that is coming out next month. As Dan mentioned, it is $99 in the US. I think it's £95 in the UK, and I think it's available in it's available in all Xbox markets, so you can check your pricing for your region. So it works with Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Windows 10 PCs, and mobile devices thanks to its Bluetooth capabilities, which is really nice. And just like the Surface headphones, it has dials on the side, so you can turn up and down your game volume or your chat volume. But I don't think it has, what's it called on the Surface? The audio, the tuning out of outside noise.
Oh, the noise cancellation.
Yeah, I don't think it has noise
canceling.
cancelling. It has a microphone that pulls out and you can hide it as well, which I think has built in trying to
Noise cancelling.
noise cancel. Yeah, but you don't have noise cancelling through the ear cups itself, I don't think.
That makes sense. That's
Yeah.
how most gaming headsets work.
Right, yes. So yes, we have 15 hours of battery life, fully charges in 3 hours. And pre-orders are now live. The other thing is worth noting, which I think is also from the Surface headphones, is you can pair two devices at once. You can pair it to your Xbox and you can pair it to your phone, for example. So you could hear game audio and a phone call on your phone, or Discord on your phone, or Discord on your laptop, or whatever, using Bluetooth, which is really nice. The Surface headphones can also pair with two devices at once. So, you asked, did the Surface team help build these, the Surface headphones team? I don't know if they've officially said, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I think, you can see some similarities here, especially with like the dials on the side and whatnot. But these are only $99 compared to the Surface headphones $250 price tag. So I assume they're using cheaper materials here and there. But we have to wait and see if these are actually very good, because gaming headsets vary in price quite dramatically. You can get very cheap ones at $40. You can get very expensive ones in the hundreds of dollars. These are exactly $100 worth, $99. But Microsoft says they have best-in-class audio tuned specifically for gaming. So Jez Corden, our Xbox editor, will review them, and he will determine whether they're actually best in class, because he's reviewed many gaming headsets. In fact, he's usually bombarded with gaming headsets, and he's reviewed. If I knew an expert in gaming headsets, I'd say it's Jez Corden. So he's definitely going to review it, and he will be able to determine whether they're actually best in class. I would love to have a comparison between them and the Surface headphones to see if audio is similar / different or whatnot.
My hunch is we already know the Surface team helped design the Xbox box.
Yeah.
They've been doing that since, I believe, the One S. And then they did the One X.
Yep.
And they definitely did the new Series X and S too. So we know the Surface is part of the Microsoft hardware team. And as far as I know, almost all hardware that comes out of Microsoft now kind of goes through the same department, even if they're not labeled Surface. So I'm pretty positive here Microsoft is using its same tech that it does for audio for its laptops and its headphones, of course. And that's one reason why I think they get into headphones. They're like, where are we making this tech for our laptops? Let's recycle it for other designs. So I think they've had to play in it, especially with the rotating earpieces, which is actually a really nice usability design that we get a lot from Microsoft. So.
What's funny as well about this is that people notice that, I've seen these headphones before. If you watch the... Right, I think it was the Xbox Christmas advert or something, or holiday advert, or something around that time. Maybe it was Thanksgiving. They have one of the actors in it, the guy who starred in Get Out, I think it was. He's wearing them, and everyone just completely ignored it. So Xbox has done this before with the Series S. Phil Spencer did an interview where the Series S was sort of sitting in the back before it was announced. Xbox seems to like to sneak in unannounced products into its videos. I wish Surface would do this, because that would make my job easier.
Yeah, but the thing with Surface devices, they're so unique and
you're right. Yeah,
category transforming that they're kind of easy to spot.
Yeah,
someone wearing black headphones. While gaming.
Yeah, that's true. You're very right.
I could barely identify half of the headphones when I see someone wearing them, right? Unless they turn to their side and you see the logo and that profile.
Yeah.
This, though, you just saw from the front and they look kind of generic, but it's kind of funny. So, but these are selling out as far as pre-orders go quite rapidly. That $99 price tag is very competitive. And the ability to switch between your phone and your Xbox is genius.
Yeah.
This is a feature a lot of people have been asking. We've seen it, with Surface headphones too, because people tend not to use headphones for just one device. They would prefer to use them for multiple ones. But being able to quickly switch to your phone while you're on an Xbox and vice versa, I think is a huge selling point. So, but yeah, I'll look for Jez's review coming up for that. He's as good as I am with laptops, that's his skill set. It's definitely headphones. So it should be kind of a fun one. Let's talk about a little bit breaking news. Dun, dun, dun. Did we have a little chime thing?
We did not.
Breaking news. Microsoft may still consider a run at TikTok if the Oracle deal falls through.
Oh, really? Wow.
So this is... I've been critical of the previous administration and the fact that they like to wave their hands around to make a lot of news about stuff like they're going to ban TikTok and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is just distraction. They're not going to ban TikTok, just like they're not going to take away Section 230 or ban Twitter. Like, none of that was just to get people riled up. Eventually, we all know Microsoft was in talks to take over TikTok, at least run the back end stuff. The deal, the problem the U.S. saw is that TikTok is based in China and there's security concerns. It's a weird argument. I get it. Concerns with China and security. I understand that in that aspect. But TikTok is not like, it's not like no one's using TikTok for work, right? It's mostly younger kids creating a lot of fun videos, by the way. I'm one of those people, even though I'm older, I don't pan TikTok. I actually think it's a really fun platform. It's up there with YouTube in terms of allowing people to create. And we've had this discussion on previous podcasts that the whole point of technology is allow people to create and do new things. And it's both entertainment, but there's also a lot of educational stuff on there. Although I know a lot of people use it for exercise stuff. Apparently there was a study that came out that said 1 out of 4, I think it was 1 out of 4 only 1 out of 4 fitness tips on there are actually accurate. Like, so don't use it completely for news and information. But the US was concerned about China and all this kind of stuff. So Microsoft was going to handle the Azure stuff. That deal fell through. And it went to Oracle, who teamed up with Walmart. Like, this is just weird, right? I mean, Oracle's, as much as people may frown upon Microsoft buying another social network, Oracle, like, really? Like, if you think Microsoft's kind of lame, doesn't know what they're doing, Oracle, everyone keeps saying it like that, and then Walmart, like, and that's because TikTok's value is actually in its algorithm and the data and all that kind of stuff. And I also think that who's better? Do you really want Apple to buy TikTok? Because they would buy and be like, oh, no more Android app.
Yeah.
Which they do. Remember, Dark Skies is supposed to go dark on Android. Do you want Facebook? There's a real winner. Everybody wants Facebook to have yet another social network that's under their belt, because Instagram and WhatsApp has been going so smoothly. I mean, to be fair, they are, but everybody kind of hates them. Do you want Google to buy them? People make fun of Microsoft for canceling everything. There's literally a website, I think it's called Google Graveyard. Just Google it. And it's a site dedicated to everything that Google has canceled. And it's miles long and way more superior to what Microsoft has done. So I don't know who would be the proper person or company to buy this. The reason I bring this all up is because apparently the Oracle deal is not going through. The new Biden administration is reconsidering it. The deal was supposed to be done back in October. And again, I don't know if you followed U.S. politics. We had a rather wild fall. And apparently they forgot to do things like cancel Section 230 and make this deal go through. So I want to read what Jez wrote, because I think he's clearly under whiskey influence or just being really snarky. TikTok is a hip and happening social network that is positively rad with Gen Z kids. He actually wrote this. The U.S. government is, however, unhappy that TikTok's data is stored in China. To that end, the previous administration forced TikTok to do a deal with a U.S.-based cloud provider, Oracle, which in of itself is a weird discussion about governments, that the U.S. government can force a foreign company to sell it to a U.S. company. Like, Europe has issues with that, I'll tell you, because they already see a lot of U.S. companies forcing Europe to adapt.
Yeah.
And apparently Fox Business has sources that Microsoft may still have a chance. And to be fair, Microsoft does kind of make the most sense here. And in terms of social networks, listen, they handle LinkedIn. Like, LinkedIn has been doing gangbusters. And when that deal happens, people are like, LinkedIn, who cares? Dude, LinkedIn is making a ton of money.
Yeah.
And it actually fits into their business model. TikTok, a little bit less so, but in terms of, you think of Microsoft as one of the world's largest cloud providers in backend and Azure and security management, they're actually a pretty solid choice for this. You have to think about that. Everybody keeps thinking it's like TikTok has a brand forward focus for them. I don't think it's going to be like labeled Microsoft TikTok or anything.
No, well, that's the thing with this deal, right? TikTok still owns TikTok, or they're just selling off part of it for the US market, which just means data and stuff will be stored on US servers and whatnot. I think it's all about data, right? So that data protection and privacy laws and whatnot. Microsoft probably will have a say in features and services that get added to the platform, but I think overall development still happens, especially with the app, in wherever it comes from now. So yeah, it wouldn't be like a full takeover like the LinkedIn acquisition was. Even then, like, Microsoft has essentially really left LinkedIn alone. LinkedIn sort of operates on its own. It does really well. And I think the same would happen with TikTok, really.
And I think Nadella has actually kind of publicly said that this is more about them doing the back end and infrastructure, and that kind of stuff. And some of the issues with these deals have been, who gets control of the company, because there was a push that, Microsoft just handles the back end, is more like a service provider for TikTok versus having a controlling stake in the actual company, which is something that the previous administration was sort of leaning on and pressing for. They were actually trying to get the entire sale of TikTok to a U.S. company, and TikTok was like, we'll allow you a minority share in the company. And this is where, it gets really technical in terms of where the deal was.
So
I think,
I guess my question
yeah,
is, how likely is the Oracle deal to fail at this point?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's a weird, I kept saying Oracle. I think it's a weird thing for Oracle Walmart to be, doing this deal where I think, Microsoft literally handles the US government's security infrastructure more and more, right? There's been
Mm-hmm.
those big deals, the Jedi, and there's another one out there. And this is kind of what Microsoft does. And I think Microsoft is not that Oracle's controversial. I don't think they really are. They have their own, I think there's something, the Java lawsuits, and they have their own side stuff going on, but they're not a controversial company. Um, Walmart, a little bit. I think they're just Walmart is this is just a pure. They want the data. They want the customer data. Literally, they want to be with the hip kids and have a foot in there. So that's just a pure pragmatic thing. But if you look at it, like as I mentioned, Google, Facebook, Apple, the FANGs, what are called the FANG group, Microsoft's the least controversial of them. Like, Kara Swisher talks a lot about this stuff. If you don't listen to her, you really should. She was talking about how, like, basically everyone in DC on the Hill hates Facebook. Like, they're not, and like any deal with Facebook, with TikTok would just not go through. It would have to be approved, and it just wouldn't happen. Apple actually has a lot more goodwill.
Yes.
There's issues with Apple, including how they do their App Store, but people are willing to give Apple a little bit more benefit of the doubt in terms of fixing stuff. Google is also kind of on thin ice. I would say they're in between Facebook and Apple in terms of trust. Mm-hmm. But Microsoft actually does have high trust amongst consumers and governments. So I could see this as kind of happening. I think it makes the most sense. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that was certainly breaking news.
Yeah. All right, let's go. We are actually doing pretty well in this podcast in terms of timing. So I don't think we'll be 2 hours, which is good. Some leaks. Let's talk about leaks, the hardware leaks. Samsung's been making a go out of laptops. In fact, 2 have leaked out that are supposedly due in May. This was by Walking Cat, who managed to get some marketing materials. One is called a Galaxy Book Pro, and apparently this is replacing the Ion, which is a weird name. Samsung has, again, people like to criticize Microsoft and things like that. Samsung has like a weird multiple personality identity disorder with its product lines, always changing product names. Like if you remember Ative, Ative was a brand for Windows and phone products for a while. So the Ion is apparently going to be called the Galaxy Book Pro now. And now they have a new one called the Galaxy Book Go, which, that mimics Microsoft's naming strategy, which I'm totally fine with. It makes sense because you can already figure out what Galaxy Book Go is. It's sort of it's a more portable version. That one apparently is going to be, that's an ARM-based device. It will be the Qualcomm 8CX. It says Gen X. I'm pretty sure it's Gen 2. Sounds like they're not sure.
Yeah.
I think there's also a 7C version, so that's going to be one of the first 7C Windows devices, which also implies that this will be way more affordable. I think it only comes with 4 gigs of RAM too, which will be a little controversial. But that should allow them to have that really low price point. And listen, I've reviewed kind of quite a few Samsung laptops. They're not sold as widespread as other companies, but they make some killer laptops.
Yeah.
And I like to see them do more in the laptop space, because if you use their phones, if you use their TVs, like the idea of them doing a really good laptop and combining those kind of things is kind of duh.
Samsung goes above and beyond when it comes to integrating their Windows PCs with their Android stuff. They have their own suite of Windows apps that sort of mimics a number of Android functionalities, like the Samsung Pen support. One of their laptops has Samsung Pen support, and they've built an app that actually brings over that same UI and stuff to Windows, which is really cool. If you're into the Samsung ecosystem, these laptops are absolutely fantastic. But if you're not into the Samsung ecosystem, then a lot of it can feel like bloatware. So obviously,
yeah, but they've gotten a little bit better at that too. Like I do find when I use their built-in Windows apps, I'm like, oh, this is useful.
Yeah,
like they actually do things to solve problems on Windows.
Yeah,
their S Pen, Panos probably won't like me saying this, but I think their S Pen is better than Surface Pen.
Wow, jeez. Yeah, but ergonomically,
No, so the
yeah,
ergonomics, you're right. They tend to have the toothpick pen, right? Which
yeah,
is comfortable to use for about 2 minutes.
right, yeah,
And then start turning your fingers. But I'm talking in terms of the actual experience of the inking, the tilt, the latency. It's really good. Like it just feels
yeah,
nice
yeah.
when you use it.
That's one area which Microsoft hasn't touched when it comes to this pen on Surface for a while. Like the ink, the
Yeah.
latency is still not. It's good, but it's not great at this point. I think Apple and indeed Samsung have overtaken when it comes to latency and also accuracy. Like Surface devices, artists complain about this a lot, but if you draw a line
Yeah.
slowly, the line isn't straight. It wiggles, and I think that's just a general. I don't think it's a defect. I think it's just how the technology is built, and
Right.
there's no software or there's no hardware solution to fix that. At least not yet. Microsoft may be working on like a new version of Pen. Or I don't think it's the pen. I think it's the digitizer that translates the pen into ink.
Yeah, this gets to the intrigue versus WAP.
Yeah. So I would love
Difference.
to see Microsoft invest some new tech into pen technology in Surface, but I guess it's not a huge priority for them because I
You
think
think
ink.
it would be though?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but if you look at the Surface Duo, you see that they put barely any effort into that when it comes to pen support.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, count me in as saying that Samsung has very good pen technology. But you're
Yeah.
right, the ergonomics. That's always we talked about this with the Lenovo. With the Lenovo Yoga ThinkPad Yoga has the pen built in
Yeah.
and flips around to be a tablet kind of computer. But it's meant to be used occasionally as a tablet and occasionally for inking.
Yeah.
And this is what Lenovo was focusing on with the Titanium, which has a full-size pen and feels more like a tablet. It's for people who want to lean into the tablet inking experience even more.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to wait and see what Samsung does here. I do find it interesting. ARM, ARM is still a big thing for Microsoft and continue will be. And Samsung being there, they already had the Galaxy Book S, which was a really groundbreaking laptop in a lot of ways. They don't sell as much as I think they should. I'm glad to see Samsung pushing here because this is a company that has a lot of potential to make some killer laptops. I am curious. Of course, my happiness will depend on the aspect ratio that they choose for these, which I didn't follow up.
Samsung usually
looks
uses
like-
16:9, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a downside. The uptick is, well, one, a lot of companies now are switching to 16:10. I mentioned that's sort of the big story coming out of CES. So maybe they'll be on board there, especially with maybe the Go. But the uptick is they also tend to use their own technology like OLED and AMOLED. What do they call their AMOLED? Do you remember?
No, I can't remember. No, I can't remember now.
Yeah, QLED.
Oh, it's a QLED. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the Ion, I think, was a QLED. Now they're switching to I believe it's Super AMOLED, but you get that kind of really cool technology, which they're one of the few, one of the few laptops where display brightness has an outdoor mode. Again, this is where they solve issues. Like when you turn on outdoor mode, it blasts that display to over 600 nits.
So Samsung makes displays, right? So they can sort of do what they want when it comes to PCs.
Exactly. And so you wouldn't want to stay on that for a long time. But if you're outdoors and in the sun and you turn this thing on, you're going to be able to totally use your laptop. And it's just it's a cool option that you can use. But this is the value that they bring. So hopefully, well, I'm sure we'll hear more. I talked to Samsung about their laptop stuff a lot. And I'm sure we'll be covering it and reviewing it. So stick a pin in that story too. Surface Duo, I was actually really mad about this. This was kind of 2 nights ago. It was literally 1 a.m. and I got an email as a tip. So I'm going, my Surface Duo just got an update. I'm like, oh, look at this lame guy who got the update from 2 weeks ago now, thinks it's news. And I was reading it and I was like, wait. And I checked, I'm like, I'm on my couch just watching TV. I'm like, oh, there really is an update coming through. Now I have to write this story. This is what I do. Windows Central got to where it is because I used to write stories no matter what time of day. And in fact, I had 2 other jobs, and at those other jobs, I would do this job.
Yeah.
And so I felt that I got to cover this. That said, and thank you for the tip. I think it was Justin, I think was his name was. I credited him in the article. But thank you for that tip because it was very valuable. To be fair, it was just the February security updates.
Yes.
February 5th. And that was likely also timed with the fact that Duo is now available in more markets.
That's right.
It's Germany, UK, Canada, and France.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that was a weird coincidence. Not a weird coincidence. I think at midnight that update went live, probably to comply with sales in other countries. Need to be up on that security update. But as far as we know, there's been no fixes in that update. But Zach, you have some more info? Perhaps?
So yeah, I'm not 100% confident on this, but I'll say it anyway, just in case it does happen, and I can claim that I was right. I've heard that there's an update coming next week for Surface Duo. That will be an actual proper February update that has Duo OS specific fixes. The update that rolled out a couple nights ago was, as Dan mentioned, simply the security patch, and I think it had 1 or 2 fixes for the touch layer, just improving it slightly. But yeah, it was only 60 megs download, so it wasn't a full, Duo OS bug fix update, which are usually in the 400 to 600 megabyte range. So yeah, pay attention next week. We may see an actual update with more fixes on the way. So yeah,
it sounds like, at least, maybe I'm being cautious here, that they're getting back on track for updates.
I would hope so. I hope they read my editorial from a couple of weeks back and were like, he's right. We need to up our game a little bit, because you know, like, things have sort of been slacking when it comes to the Duo. Like, I think Microsoft has said that, they were talking to European outlets about the Duo's launch, that Android 11 would show up mid-year. So they are working on that. So I don't know why it's taking this long. I don't have a concrete answer for that, but I have been asking people who may be familiar with it. And one thing that came up, which again may or may not be true, I don't know, is that because the Duo is running the Snapdragon 855, getting Android 11 on it takes a little bit longer because it requires packages from Qualcomm itself, and Microsoft is paying Qualcomm for extended support, because technically the 855 is out of support right now, but OEMs can pay Qualcomm for extended support, and Microsoft is doing that. But as a result, I think it takes longer for Qualcomm to release is it the BOM or the BSP packages? I'm not familiar with Android development, unfortunately, but there's packages that. Yeah. Go on.
I'm not 100% sure, but you are 100% correct about Qualcomm support and older chips. This is a big controversy, and it's one of the reasons why when people complain about Android devices not getting long-term support for updates, it's not the OEM's fault. It's just that Qualcomm basically draws a line and says we're not going to be shipping those packages.
Yeah.
And so a company like LG really has no choice. Now there's been movement there where you're right, they can kind of pay Qualcomm, kind of like what Windows 7 does with Microsoft. And also Qualcomm has been working with Google to extend that range to reach, I believe, 3 years for updates. That's a really good point with the processor.
And I did a brief internet search to try and find out. I don't know, my research wasn't extensive, but as far as I'm aware, there's no 855 device with Android 11 yet. Because of this very reason, for OEMs who still have 855 devices, it's up to them to pay Qualcomm for extended support, and I assume most of them haven't. I think OnePlus is, because I think they are working on Android 11 for their 855 devices, but I believe that rollout's been delayed due to some technical reason. Could be the same reason why the Duo's not got it yet. We just don't know at this point. So, we were sort of shouting at Microsoft, but I kind of didn't realize that. But no 855 device has Android 11, as far as I'm aware. So
no, it's a very good point. I was actually fired up my BlackBerry Key 2 recently.
God, I don't think that got a single Android OS update, did it? The Key 2?
It's still on Android 8.
That is ridiculous. That is terrible. I can't believe they got away with that.
But it did literally just get a security update.
Yeah, they still get security. That's the weirdest thing. They get security. They just never got an actual major OS release, which is what I was worried about with the Duo. But I think we are going to get at least one.
And yet the Key 2 Lite apparently hasn't gotten these updates. So, but I was surprised to see it. I still have a warm spot in my heart for the Key 2, even though it's more about the looks. I just think it looks awesome.
Yeah.
Then when I try to use the keyboard, I'm like, yeah.
I have a Key 1 somewhere. I loved that thing. I took that to Seattle for the first time I went to build. And I was using that phone. But that, I think, got one Android update from 7 to 8, and then they abandoned it.
Yeah. It's a cool looking device. But that's BlackBerry for you. But I think you kind of nailed it. I completely forgot about the Snapdragon 855 thing, and that's the reason why. This is weird. Where Duo version 2 is going to be really interesting, because we are expecting a modern processor, whatever is kind of currently shipping. fingers crossed. So.
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up between the 870 and the 888. I think the only reason because the 888 makes sense because it's a premium device, and I think it will depend on whether they can put 5G into it. I think they can. But if they can't get 5G into
also
it,
battery too.
Yeah, right. Because Qualcomm has the 870 now, which is like a 865 plus plus. So we'll have to wait and see which one. I think it'll be the 888. I was told ages ago now that it would be using the flagship processor, so 888, which was previously known as the 870. I can't remember now, but the 888
I haven't
itself.
been following.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So it should be. So there you go. Fingers crossed on that. Which also means if you're, contemplating buying a Surface Duo right now in Germany or France,
you probably shouldn't.
If you flip devices are comfortable with knowing that a newer version is coming out in 9 months, and some people really are. Zach is.
Yeah.
Zach flips more device. I have to literally ask him, like, do you still have the thing? No, I sold it.
Yeah.
I do. It for like 2 weeks. Some people are comfortable with it. And if you're comfortable doing that, by all means, it's a fun device. I'm still using it as my main phone. It's fun to watch.
It is incredibly expensive in these new markets, though. It's still selling at essentially full price, and in some markets more than full price that it was in the US. Right now, it's $999 in the US, which it isn't in these new markets. In Canada, I think it's $1,800. Although in Canada, you do get a pair of free Surface earbuds, which is not available in any other market. In France and Germany, you get a pair of wired earbuds in the box, but they're not Surface earbuds. They're just standard sort of Microsoft earbuds. The UK doesn't get anything. It's the exact same box as the US, except it has a UK adapter in it, and it costs £1,350, which is about $1,800. So
they don't even give you beans.
They don't even give you beans. It is a complete rip-off. You shouldn't buy it at the price. You will actually save yourself about £350 if you import the US version using Big Apple Buddy or a service like that. I think I haven't personally used Big Apple Buddy. Dan shipped mine over, but lots of people online have said Big Apple Buddy is a fantastic service. It's worked for them. So try at your own risk, but importing it, you save yourself £300 if you're in the UK or in any other market. And I actually would recommend doing that. It does take a little bit longer to get delivered, of course. And when it comes to your manufacturer's warranty, things get a little murky. I think it's still supported. I think if you import the US version, you can still get it serviced in your market as long as Duo is sold in your market. But yeah, so look into that if you're actually considering it. Keep in mind, it's still a very buggy device. It's not perfect. It's a Gen 1. Camera's not amazing. But yes.
You don't like it for your cat photos?
Yeah, I can't take cat photos. It's impossible. They move around all the time. It takes 5 seconds for the shutter to activate.
Fair enough. There was something I was going to say, but now I forgot. Oh, well. It'll come to me later. That's your Surface Duo news. Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say. For those curious, it's an odd question, but not really that odd. There is zero difference between this Surface Duo in Europe.
I don't know how they got away with that. I really, because I've said it before, but in Europe, they are required to have certain markings on the back, and they don't. I don't know where they've hidden them, or I just don't know how they've done it, but they managed to hide them.
Maybe it's under blacklight. It's there.
But but if you read the rules, like the EU rules are specific. They're like, it has to be visible on display, and it cannot be removed. Like, you cannot rub it off or paint over it. It has to be a permanent thing on there.
They're like, I've seen software versions of that though.
Yeah, I know. But the rules are, it has to be on the device. You have to be able to see it without turning it on. But yeah, Microsoft has gotten around. Like, even Apple had. Like, if you look at the new iPhone in France and in the UK, they have it on the side. It's embedded into the band. It looks terrible, but it's there because it's required by law. But Microsoft has gone away with it. I don't know how they've done it, but they did it.
I mean, an iPhone anyway, you're going to put a case.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so it doesn't really matter. All right, well, that goes for the Duo news. Let's wrap up here. I think that's almost it. But Toughbook and Bio. So yeah, I reviewed 2 laptops this week that are, well, let's talk about Toughbook, Panasonic Toughbook. Most of you are not going to buy this. If you use a Toughbook, hit me up on Twitter. I'm curious about your stories, because if you use a Toughbook, you've been assigned one by your job. I find Panasonic's work here fascinating for just a couple of reasons. One, this gets out of my wheelhouse of just normal consumer laptops. One of the things I like to talk about with computing is the fact, and this is why I don't like just focusing on like Apple and the MacBook, when we just talk about how their market share is actually pretty poor when it comes to computers. Computers are just more than editing a video at Starbucks, your latest YouTube thing, and doing your podcast, right? That's a small percentage of what computers are used for. Panasonic really specializes in making computers for the rest of the world that actually does hardcore work. So the Toughbook series is basically made for police, EMT, fire, U.S. and foreign militaries, the CIA, construction and contractors who are out there building things. I also like to say they also make the laptops you see in every action movie. I love watching movies where they have like the CIA or the government. You can even see it in WandaVision. They did use some Surface devices, by the way, WandaVision. Zach pointed that out, tweets a few weeks ago. But in the last episode, you can see them. They use Toughbooks because that's what the government uses. They're not going to use Macs like out in the field. They'll break in a second. Are you kidding me? And so I've always been fascinated by these things. And, Panasonic, and I think they like us because I take a genuine interest in covering this technology because I think it's just wild what they do. So the Toughbook 33 came out in 2017. It has now been revised, which is just a whole other thing, right? They don't update these things every year because, governments that buy these keep them for years. So this is a new version. It's still called a Toughbook 33, but this device is the Surface Book if it went to, as I said, military school, and it came in as a little boy, came out as a man. It is just insane. It weighs like 6 pounds with the keyboard option, but it's a tablet with a bottom keyboard that clicks in. And you can reverse the tablet like a Surface Book and lay it down the other way. It's a 12-inch 3:2 aspect ratio with a 2K display. It's actually a really good looking display, color accurate and all that kind of stuff. It has a pen built in, and it's just wild how they do this stuff. It has a siloed pen that like pops out like a kind of like a trigger thing, and you can pull the pen out so you always have it with you. It has dedicated buttons to control things. It has night mode, which is my favorite part. So the screen, you could turn to green, orange, red, maybe, and I think blue because if you're like using this in the military, you're out in the field, you don't want like a white screen acting as like a flashlight lighting up your face and everything around you. So this goes into like you can put red mode on, and now you can still see the screen, but it's not going to give off a lot of light. It just looks super cool. It also supports 4G LTE. They now support eSIM. They're the first rugged laptop to support eSIM. It also supports the special bands that are used by emergency providers. They have their own separate LTE bands that they can use, so it supports that. It's a fascinating area. They told me they had to work on the keyboard, the premium keyboard that's in there, because these are beyond water resistant, right? Like this isn't just a spill-proof keyboard. Like they hit it with a fire hose to make sure it can survive. But one of the reasons I was told, like with EMTs, they had to make sure that it was able to be cleaned easy enough because they would actually get blood and matter on these laptops, which is a problem Apple users or even Surface users just never have to contend with, right? I just find the engineering around these devices just incredible because they were always inventing new technologies to make it completely rugged. And listen, if you're a prepper, if you know what preppers are, they're people who prepare for the end of the world. This is your laptop. Go get one of these things. It was tremendous fun for me to review. I will say though, in typical Dan review, the trackpad sucks. And Panasonic can do decent trackpads. I also had their Toughbook 55, which is more of a standard laptop. Doesn't detach. Does support inking though. I've used that. I've hiked mountains, gone up 4,000 feet, and still use the LTE on it, which is just totally wild because they even make a solar charger now, so you can literally use this off the grid. But the trackpad on this one is just not good. And I actually told them, I was like, have you heard of Sensel, the company that makes the haptic trackpads? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, you guys should. And I gave them the information. I'm like, you should use their tech because the trackpad stinks because it's kind of small and doesn't move because they don't want moving parts because it would break. You know, if you're a cop, like you're mashing this thing, like it's got to last forever. And it also has to work with gloves. I'm like, boom. I'm like, the Sensol trackpad does all that. So like, and it's really good. So fingers crossed that they'll revise that. If that deal happens, I should get a cut. I was a matchmaker. But it was just fun to review. So that's a tough book. Go read it. Just it's how working class and the people who serve you every day. If you get picked up in an ambulance, God forbid, you know, if you're in the military, like this is what you use. And I just find that super cool because the people who use that aren't going to hang out with the people in Starbucks making a YouTube video and doing some superficial nonsense. So kudos to Panasonic. They have a lot more stuff coming out too, which I'm very excited to be covering. The other one is also fascinating. It's Vaio. And I didn't say Sony Vaio because Sony actually pulled out of Vaio around 2014. Vaio is an independent Japanese company now. Sony does have a minority control stake in there, but Vaio is independent. And they've been making a consistent, strong comeback, going back to their roots. I've covered their SX12, which is just a cool little mini laptop. The Vaio Z was last revised also in 2017. This is a crazy laptop. And I love Japanese engineering because it's very different from what we know from Korean markets as well as Western markets. And they have their own philosophy. First of all, their laptops are also super rugged and tough. Go search Sony Vaio lab tests on YouTube, and you'll see how they torture their laptops. They stick pens in them and then close the lid, and you can see the lid like flexing and bending, and it's just like, and they turn it on. Like they just build these things to last forever. So this new Vaio Z is built from the ground up. It uses carbon fiber. Now, Lenovo uses carbon fiber, but they use it as sort of like flat panels. The top lid and the bottom lid are carbon fiber. They invented basically Vaio here, a new process that's a 3D mold of carbon fiber. So the entire chassis is now carbon fiber, including all the round curved edges. And that's super hard to do. It's also super expensive to do, which is probably why this thing starts at like $3,400 or something like that. It goes up to over $4,000. But it has a 14-inch display, 4K, HDR. But what makes it really special is it has a 35-watt Intel 11th Gen Core i7 processor. So this is a standard Ultrabook. And if you follow Ultrabooks, they use U-series processors. That's where the U comes from. It's Ultrabook. 15 watt, and now we're seeing 28 watts. They stuck in a chip that you would usually find in the XPS 15, X1 Extreme, and gaming laptops. This thing is as powerful as a 10th Gen Core i9. It's a bonker strong processor, but they put it in a laptop that weighs 2.3 pounds. Like, this is just like, I've never seen a laptop this light, but also this powerful. It's just a weird mixture. The fans do get loud. If you're going to use that processor, you will hear this thing across the room, but you can control the fans. They have a quiet mode and all that kind of stuff. But what's weird, of course, it doesn't have like an NVIDIA GPU. It's just standard Iris Xe graphics. So it's a very unique device for people who need a strong CPU, don't care about gaming and graphics. This is a business laptop after all. But it actually gets pretty good battery life. The keyboard is fantastic, 1.5 millimeters of travel, and it's just blast to type on. Go check out the review. It's just, Vaio has a very dedicated audience. They're sold primarily in Japan, the United States, and Brazil, which is, yeah, it's odd. So if you're in Europe, you're going to have a hard time getting them. They are slowly going to other markets, but there's a lot of legacy with Vaio, the brand, and it's nice to see them kind of getting back to their roots. And I kind of wish more people could experience what makes Vaio, like why Vaio is so revered. They actually have, this is so Japan. If you follow, like, I said that they're the Grand Seiko of laptop manufacturers. If you get that reference, you're a cool, educated person. So when it comes to watches, there's Seiko, and then there's a high level called Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko are very expensive, but like all Japanese stuff, they go through this, like, one watchmaker makes it and certifies everything, and it's just this meticulous design, and you pay a lot of money for it. They do that with this laptop. Basically, before it gets shipped, there's like one bio engineer who does like, I think like 50 tests, quality assurance tests, and it literally gets a stamp and it has a name. It's some kind of finish that they call it. But of course, this is common with Japan. Nikon, there's a Nikkor lens that they only made like, I think like 15 of. And every time they made it, a Shinto priest would bless it. Like Japan's quality and design stuff is just fascinating. So I kind of wish I want to see more bios. I think more people should try them out because they're really fun devices. But there's an argument to be made that you don't need to pay $3,000 for a laptop to get a good laptop experience. So good luck to them on trying to convince people to buy that. I think, listen, if you're in Japan, Japanese brands have more, prominence there. In other words, if you're in Japan, you're more likely to buy a Vio than you are to buy like Sony or even something from Microsoft. We've seen this with Nintendo doing well there and Xbox struggling. But that's all I have to say on the Vio stuff. So, but you can go check out, people are asking about the benchmarks. Yeah, Razer Books has a 28 CPU. It does come close. Go in the review, you can go see all the benchmarks. I compare it to and I mentioned the Razer Book 13 as a very good alternative. And in a lot of ways, the Book 13 could, sort of outperform. I didn't mention this also has PCIe 4 for the SSD, which is insane. I've never seen a good SSD will get a 3,000 megabytes per second sequential read. That's good, right? And we're seeing that more common. This goes to 6,500. I've never seen an SSD double that. And same with the write speeds. The write speeds are around 5,000. It's insanely fast for large transfers of files. You're going to see more PCIe 4 coming to Intel laptops this year. But when you combine all that stuff together, it's just it's a beast of a laptop. So go check out that review, see all the benchmarks, all cool stuff. And now we're at hour and 43 minutes. So I think we'll start to wrap up. Zach, did you think of a thing of the week?
No, and I'm ashamed.
Our lives are pretty simple.
We're all working at home. There's we can't go out anywhere. It's hard to find a thing of the week.
This is true. I don't disagree. I even tend to eat the same thing every day for my one meal, just because I have a big salad, I have a couple eggs, I have a little bit of meat, and then that's it. All right. So my thing of the week, I actually have two. Again, since we're not doing much, mine are TV show related. So here are my recommendations. Search Party. I don't think I've mentioned this one. Search Party is a great show. It's on HBO Max right now, so you have a subscription to that. Go check it out. It was a TBS show. It has like 100% Rotten Tomatoes score. I saw the commercials for this. It's a dark mystery comedy show, if that makes sense. It was a little bit of a slow burn. It's one of those shows that starts off, I kind of hate the characters, and now I love the characters. And I'm just started season 3. There's 4 seasons out. It is just a show. You'll never predict where it's going. Fantastic acting. The casting is just amazing. I just absolutely love the show. I just think it's just been so fun. And the other show I started watching after also a lot of critical acclaim is Cobra Kai. So I grew up watching Karate Kid. A lot of Daniel, the same thing, like Italian. Like there was like this weird bond I had with that movie that people would also, call me like Daniel LaRusso as a kid. I started watching this finally. I got so hooked on this show. I think it is such a masterful continuation of that story that does it in such a clever way. The way that they reverse roles and all this kind of stuff, I just thought it was just super smart. Like, it's just kind of perfect. The acting is great. It's funny. I just love how they kind of blur the lines between good guys and bad guys and what makes what, and how also you can have traumatic events as a teenager that later define who you are. That's on Netflix. That was a YouTube Red. Remember that? You'd have to pay for YouTube. Mm-hmm. And it was part of their exclusive shows. And that bombed. So they moved it to Netflix, where I think it has much better life. That's also on season 3 now. But big thumbs up to both of those shows. So go watch those and keep busy. And hopefully Zach will have something fun he'll figure it out in the next week. But I don't know. Anyway, we're going to wrap up the podcast now. So we are, of course, doing this live. So we'll do Q&A. If you guys have been asking questions we haven't answered during the podcast, you can now ask them again, and we'll actually try to answer them. If you're listening to this recorded, you do not get to hear that portion. I'm sorry about that, but you can join us Fridays, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel at Windows Central. And you can watch our live videos. You can watch the replays there, and you can also join the live chats where you get to interact with us. As always, we appreciate that. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. We can answer your questions there. But as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Take care, everyone.
Fantastic. So yes, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. I may have missed this, but Zach, how's the Studio 2 been working for you? Works great. Unlike the Surface Book, which can't do the show, the Surface Studio can, even though it's a 7th gen CPU, but it's a more powerful 7th gen CPU than the 10th gen CPU in the book, apparently. Yeah, I thanks to the whole Surface Book Studio shenanigans, I've learned what TDP is and the wattage of things. It's like, oh, that actually makes a difference, does it? Okay, good to know.
I think a big difference, especially when you go to, even the 45 watt chips that's why what's used in the studio is basically a workstation processor, but still not a desktop class processor.
Yeah. But apparently this is enough for my workflow, so I'm happy.
Yeah, and that's, again, as you point out, that's relative, right? Depending on what you plan on using it for.
The Microsoft Surface Laptop 3 is on sale at Microsoft, Costco, and Best Buy for $400 off. Are we close to the Surface Laptop 4 being revealed? The Surface Laptop 4 is coming in April. So 2 months from now. So yes, we are getting close.
Yeah, this comes to an interesting conundrum for people, which is we are expecting the 4. We are expecting AMD processors, although we don't know 4,000 or 5,000 yet. On the other hand, if you wait that long, you'd probably be able to get a laptop 3 heavily discounted.
Yes.
And that's an interesting trade-off that some people need to think about, because if you can save a couple $100 and it's good enough for you, it's not like laptop 3 is going to suddenly be slow. And we're not expecting, if I'm correct, Zach, significant changes to laptop 4.
No, same design, just internal upgrades to the processor and GPU and whatnot.
Yeah, so although, Intel 11th gen
is pretty good, yeah. And also more importantly, I think AMD Ryzen, 4000, which is a huge improvement over 3000, which in the laptop 3.
Yep. So more bang for your buck. I think, this generation of CPUs does make a huge difference, more so than 8th to 10th or to 9th and 7th to 8th, all that kind of stuff. So.
Will the Pro 8 come out at the same time as the Laptop 4? No. If we do get a Pro 8 this year, it will be fall of this year, likely October, November. And it might even launch alongside Sun Valley, who knows. According to Brandon LeBlanc, 21H1 won't get any more new features. Can we still expect some more visual improvements via a Windows Experience Pack update for 21H1? I do not think so. Like I said, I think all of the visual stuff is being saved for Sun Valley, which is 21H2. 21H1 is deliberately a minor update so that it can make way and not take spotlights away from the Sun Valley, which is 21H2. Do you use an external display with the Studio 2, or is 28-inch enough? 28 inch is enough. For the aspect ratio, it feels more like a 32-inch monitor. It's great. It's fine. I have no issues. I don't need another one.
Yeah, Studio is a little weird. You could definitely do multi-monitors.
You can do it, yeah, but I don't need it.
It gets a little... It's also a jarring contrast with design.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, nothing fixes it.
It looks really weird.
Yeah,
it's like strapping a spoiler to a BMW, like one of those spoilers.
Yeah.
You can do it. Does it look good? Yeah, probably not.
Do we know about Surface Go 3? We do not. When was the Go 2? When did that last year? I do not expect a Go 3 this year.
Any thoughts on HPN V14? Seems like a poor man's XPS 15. I have that. It's out in the other room. I will be reviewing that soon. As I mentioned, I have like 6 billion laptops to review. Next week, I'm focusing on Dell, so just a heads up. I owe them a lot of reviews for stuff. Then I'll be looking at the NV14. I will say so far I'm very impressed with the NV14. I think it's... Don't forget, there's also an NV15. So as far as what the poor man's XPS 15, I think either one of those. The NV15 is significantly more powerful because of its GPU, but the 14 is pretty awesome so far. I think it's a really, the NV series is just bang for your buck, really good stuff. So I also have a Dell Latitudes and Inspirons to review. So I'm so exhausted from all this stuff.
Is x64 support for Windows on ARM coming in 21H1 or 21H2? That will be 21H2 at the earliest. 21H1 is not getting any new features.
I think literally as I've been doing this podcast, I just got another laptop review offer.
What's the lavender-looking device over your left shoulder, Zach, in front of the red moleskin? Lavender? There's a sort of white/creamy Microsoft band. Is that what you're referring to? That's an unreleased employee-only Microsoft Band 2. Unless you're referring to the sort of grey thing, which is the Lumia McLaren, which was also cancelled. This is my box of cancelled things. There's a Lumia 950 there, but it's a very special Lumia 950 that has pen support and side touch, and is also running a version of Windows that was never released, which I'm not allowed to show you ever, apparently. Maybe I'll show it one day, but I can't show it today. And then there's a Surface RT, which is actually running a build of Windows 10, which was accidentally leaked for it. Then there's a HoloLens, which no longer gets updates because Microsoft abandoned it for the HoloLens 2.
I'm just going to announce this, although we'll do the story on it later. Ugh, I don't want to do a story. Why are they going to get this on a Friday? They got to announce this.
What?
New and existing customers can get the Microsoft Surface Duo as low as $10 a month when they trade in an eligible device and buy on a qualifying installment plan with an eligible unlimited plan. Whew,
what, from Microsoft Store?
AT&T.
Oh, okay. Who cares?
This means you can get it for only $300, nearly 80% off, or $400 off without a trade-in. That's a lot of hoops to jump through. But there you go.
Do you think the Duo 2 will have an external camera like the prototype in Marques Brownlee's video with panels over a year ago? I do. I do think it will have an external camera.
Someone was also asking, I don't know if you answered about Thunderbolt 4 in Microsoft Laptop 4.
I don't think so. If the Pro 8 doesn't, I don't see why the laptop would.
I don't think it's going to for two reasons. One, getting Thunderbolt 4 with AMD, tricky.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but it's tricky. I'm not sure exactly what needs to happen there, but there's licensing and costs where you would get it for free in theory with the Intel because it's built into 11th gen unless you opt out of it. Not exactly sure how that works. My point is they wouldn't sell the Intel version with Thunderbolt 4 and not offer it on AMD. I think it'd be easier for them to just be like, hey, no one gets Thunderbolt 4. Easy peasy. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Any thoughts on Microsoft cutting down support for Windows 10 Enterprise LTSC from 10 years to 5 years, and do you think this is a good or bad move? I think it's fine. Microsoft has the data, and then I think they can see that the majority of their customers on the LTSC branch are moving to a new version of the LTSC branch in way long, in a few years rather than 10 years. So yeah, cutting from 10 to 5 is fine. I think it also makes it easier for Microsoft to, let go of legacy, because supporting a version of Windows 10 for 10 years means they've got to support a version of Windows 10 for 10 years. That's a decade. It's a long time to keep, updating old stuff. Come on now. We need to let go of this old stuff. Duo camera is better than the HP Elite X3. I can't. The Elite X3's camera was terrible at launch, but I actually think it became okay eventually. It wasn't the best for sure. The 950 was still beat it in every way, but it didn't. Yeah, I think it was alright at the end of the day.
Was it? I just lost it. Oh, do you expect the next iteration of ARM CPU for Windows to be as good or as much surpassing as M1?
I doubt
think
so.
Surpass.
Yeah.
M1. Again, this gets into apples and oranges kind of thing. So there's two issues here. One, in terms of raw performance, will it meet the M1? You're comparing different platforms, so it's a little bit difficult. But even there, I think no. I think we will see a new chip come out that will be significantly faster than what we've seen before. I'm talking multiplier jump 1, 2, 3x, right? I think it's going to be, you're going to see that. The other issue is the fact that Apple's system allows emulation that just works better and is more efficient in some ways than Microsoft's. That's a separate issue from the type of the processor they're going to use. Like eventually, I mean, you can argue they could just brute force it, but there needs to be sort of software optimization there that needs to assist with the emulation layer, which we honestly don't have any insight into, at least I don't, in terms of plans and improvement and all that. So those things go hand in hand. Now, if you don't ever emulate existing 64-bit x86 or 32-bit software, that's kind of a non-issue. But I think you're going to see a lot of movements here, even from maybe AMD, maybe from Intel. So I think people put a little too much, I already said a lot in the M1, but it's not all about speed.
Yeah.
So,
do you have insights into what's going on with the Iron development? It was supposed to RTM in December, but we still see new compiles. Was RTM moved to a later date? I guess yes, it was, if they're still compiling new builds. In regards to Windows Server, I think it's clear cut. RTM was missed in December, and now they have a new date for RTM. But I don't care about server, so I've not looked into it. Regarding Windows 10X, it's a little bit of a different story, although I assume it shares the same result. Because Windows 10X is based on Windows Core, in theory, they can RTM a build and then continue compiling new builds and then push those new builds as an update to Windows 10X. Because Windows Core has a super fast update system, full build updates aren't as dramatic and they don't take as long and they're not as risky on Windows Core OS. They apply just like a cumulative update on Windows 10 desktop. So in theory, Microsoft could have signed off on 20279 for 10X, ship that to OEMs, and that's what will ship on 10X devices in the spring, and have a day one update that bumps that build number from 20279 to 20295, or whatever they end up having as a day one update. That is entirely technically possible, but I have a feeling Microsoft will continue to use the current method, which is one build number that goes to OEMs, and then they revise that build number with Delta updates. So 20279.xxx, for example. I don't know the answer as to what they're doing here. Microsoft has clamped down on 10X information internally, so I've not been able to find an exact answer. Assuming that the RTM hasn't been compiled, which I think is quite likely, we're now getting to a point in which 10X may be pushed to the fall. I have not had any confirmation on that from sources, so do not take that as gospel. But considering it was supposed to be done in December and we're now February 19th and they're still rolling new builds, and assuming that they haven't got an RTM build yet, we are cutting it close for spring launch. That said, there's no external testing for 10X. So there's no time or period where that's going to have to happen. So they could essentially go for another month or so before they really have something to send to OEMs for launch in the spring. But like I said, they might be pushing this back to summer. Microsoft, luckily for them, haven't really officially said when 10X is coming, so they can push it back and not really have anyone frown upon it. But as we all know, they were planning spring, and that may not happen now. But like I said, as soon as I find out, have more concrete info on this, I will be sure to tweet about it or write about it if it's significant enough. Will any Stardew Valley news come out during Ignite? I don't think so. If anything, build, but I have a feeling Microsoft will probably host a specific Windows event in June, maybe. But we'll have to wait and see. Have you used 10X on a Surface Go 2? If so, does it work well? Not a Surface Go 2. I've used it on a Go 1 and it works surprisingly well on there. I don't see why it would be any worse on a Go 2, but of course that depends on the drivers. So you'll have to try it out for yourself at your own risk, of course.
Some devs will kill you for calling it emulation. They'd be calling it translation. Yeah, but no one really cares what devs say. That's why they're dev.
Wow, Jesus. Is the journal app indicative of what Sun Valley will bring in terms of app redesign? I think so in some areas. In regards to rounded UI design, yes. But yes, I think it also uses its own sort of theme and whatnot. So I wouldn't look at that app and think, oh, Sun Valley. But it definitely shares some common similarities with the Sun Valley UI, which does have rounded context menus and whatnot.
Someone was telling me on Twitter regarding Taskbar X and our discussion about centered icons. Regarding centered start. Oh, is that centered start?
Centered start. Well, on 10X it's centered.
Oh, okay, yeah. Who uses a mouse rather than the keyboard button?
I use them. I click the start button with a mouse. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
I'm actually really not into keyboard shortcuts. I use the Windows key and D just to minimize everything, and and Windows key 1 to open the browser. That's all I use.
Yeah, I mean, and it also depends on the device. Like on a laptop, I'm more likely to use. I know. Basically, part of my usage is actually 50-50 divided between how I use Start. But then I have all the icons pinned to taskbar, which is really what our discussion was about. And in which case, that's almost all mouse for me. And then they go, and for touch, surely left align is better when holding the device. All right,
your thumbs aren't down here.
First of all, not everybody's holds a device with a left hand.
Yeah, true.
Is right-handed. So.
Yeah.
Also, most interface elements in Edge corner, Mac OS, left Chrome. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm using 10X on Surface Go. I don't feel like I'm losing anything because the screen is so small.
This is what I'm saying. This topic is very controversial because a lot of people feel strongly in one way and strongly in the other way. The fact of the matter is, scientifically, it makes more sense in the center. That's just how it is. You don't have to agree with that, but it is better that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I'm on a desktop and using a mouse, center is way better. Just get an ultra-wide monitor. Try it yourself and see how much you like having icons left.
It's also just aesthetically nicer. It just looks nicer.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Although Mac OS gets a failing mark for me, out-of-box experience, because they pack 15 apps onto that stupid launcher.
Yeah.
And it's just icons.
Uh-huh.
And I have no idea what they are, half of them. And a lot of them are for nonsense products I don't want to use by Apple.
That's actually
their weird
true.
note-taking apps.
Windows does a good job at being very simple out of box, unless you get an OEM that pins stuff to the taskbar. But Windows Clean Install is 4 apps on the taskbar, and I think 6 to 9 apps pinned to the start menu. I think that's nice. That's a very clean sort of starting point. But macOS is here's everything on the device pinned to the dock.
Yeah.
It's whoa, chill out.
Like
I don't need most of this.
So first I had to research or look up how to enable right-click on the mouse, because good Lord, what is that about? So I enabled right-click, and then I had to go right-click everything and be like, goodbye, remove, remove. I'm not using half this stuff. Now it looks nice. Now I have the other thing too is, and I don't know if there's a fix for that, when you remove the apps from that launcher, the remaining apps get larger.
Yeah, you can change the size of the dock though in settings.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do
but
that.
As I'm removing stuff, my icons kind of like this. I'm stop! Why are they? I'm not feeding them. Stop growing.
Yeah. In macOS settings, you can change the size of the dock, and you can also change the because I think by default it doesn't magnify anymore. But in the past, when you would hover over an icon, the icon would get bigger. Which you can re-enable in the new versions of macOS, and I actually prefer it just a little bit, just make it slightly bigger. But yeah, there are actually a few customization options for that dock. You can move it as well. You can move it left or to the right side of the screen, but not the top. You can't move it to the top. Not allowed up there.
Ryan says using fancy zones will have you using more keyboard shortcuts.
I'm sure.
Wrong. I'm using fancy zones right now. Yeah, you can't use a 38-inch ultra-wide monitor without fancy zones.
I think maybe you don't have to hold shift to activate it.
Yeah. No, I'm saying fancy zones in that ability should be built into Windows for this support.
Yeah, you're right.
It's just weird to use 38 inches and not have that feature built in. That said, it starts up automatically, and I've always been using the Windows arrow key to snap things. It's just the same behavior. I'm not really sure that's keyboard shortcuts. I'm not really using any more. I only use a few keyboard shortcuts.
Will some cut Andromeda features come to Windows 10X for dual screens? I don't think so. I think most of the Andromeda stuff that they're working on instead. Which Microsoft products are you each looking forward to the most this year? Obviously, Sun Valley will be quite a big deal for Windows users. And also, if they are able to deliver it, the Duo 2. Excited to see that show up. But yeah, I think that's it for me. And hopefully a Studio 3 if they do actually bring that out this year, but I'm not too confident they will.
Any truth to rumors that Samsung could use its Exynos in laptops? For that matter, any other ARM players in Windows. So Windows on ARM isn't limited to just Qualcomm Snapdragons. Although Qualcomm even tried to do their own branding for a while. They called it like Windows on Snapdragon.
Yeah.
But it's technically not limited to it. Having said that, we've never seen non-Snapdragon ones out there. As to the question about Samsung and Exynos, I'm going to say no. I'm not ruling it out, but the leak clearly showed images and it referred to Snapdragon 8CX.
Yeah.
And not Exynos.
I think it would require them to work with Microsoft to optimize the chip for Windows with drivers and whatnot. That said, Microsoft and Samsung do have a partnership when it comes to phones, and maybe part of that partnership is can we have Windows on Exynos? And assuming there's no exclusivity deal with Snapdragon, I don't see why they couldn't do it.
As far as I know, there isn't. But yeah, these are interesting questions. I mean, Samsung could right now be working with Microsoft to make that happen.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't happen this gen, but maybe the next gen. Also maybe Samsung is like, wait and see. I think a lot of companies are. We are getting the new HP Elite Folio on ARM soon. But I could see that happening. But we don't have any indication that it is.
All right, a couple more questions, then it's time to head off, I think. Any chance the Studio 3 will be modular or a monitor so we can use our own hardware with it? I'd like to be able to pair it with an RTX 3080. These are all great questions. The rumor was that the next Surface Studio would have modular elements to it, including the ability to use it as an external monitor. Whether or not I will actually deliver that, it remains to be seen. I have not heard anything about a Studio 3 myself, unfortunately, other than it was delayed from 2020 to this year. And hopefully not delayed again. So yes, we'll have to wait and see, unfortunately. No feedback on the lack of Surface Duo roadmap and release notes. That's a really important point that I can try to bring up during the next All Hands with Satya. Please do. If you could share my editorial with someone important, please go ahead, because I've not heard anything official from anyone who works on the Duo.
And then snap a photo of Satya rolling his eyes. God, that guy again. Isn't that the guy that buys all our old garbage that we didn't sell?
Yeah, like, Zach Bowden. Ugh. That guy. Don't show me his articles. I hate them. No, I'm kidding. Sasha doesn't know who I am.
Excellent podcast, guys. Thank you. We try. Not perfect, but we try. Do you ever think Microsoft will... beat you to it. Microsoft will ever create an OS optimized for PC gaming? No.
I mean, they do. It's called Xbox.
Yeah. Well, there's Xbox, but Game Bar goes a long way to do that, right? Shuts off background processes, gives you more shortcuts and all that. I think that's their play. I know there's still probably more work that could be done there, but when you think about the brute force of the processing power and GPUs we have today, I'm not really sure it's much of a priority for them.
That was a question that I've just missed. I've noticed that Windows 10X looks a lot like Windows 10 Team. Is that intentional? Probably. 10 Team has a very simplified UI designed for touch, essentially, and that's kind of what 10X was built for as well. So yeah, I assume there was a purposeful, intentional design choice to make them look kind of similar. But 10 Team uses a different shell entirely. It's not the 10X shell for obvious reasons.
Did you guys already speculate on Duo 2 release this year?
Yeah.
Have we ever mentioned Duo 2 release? I feel like we don't ever talk about that on every single podcast. Short answer, yes. We said the fall. We've written articles with it. We're still sticking to that.
For now.
For now.
Any clue on prorate Sorry, go ahead.
Wait, unless I was going to say, unless people in comments keep saying it's going to be canceled. From what I understand, Nadella reads our comments.
Yeah, and he decides.
And if enough people say Microsoft's probably going to cancel it, he's going to cancel it. Because that's actually how Microsoft actually works. And so if you keep saying that,
it will happen.
He's going to be like, you know what, they're right. And
happened with Windows Phone. Enough people said it was dead, and it eventually died.
yeah, he's like, fine. He flips his table. You know what, it is dead. You jerks. How do you like that?
They have the weekly dead meeting where if you get invited to that meeting, your product's being killed.
Yeah.
Any clue on Pro 8 from internal sources? What we thought was the Pro 8 was the Pro 7 Plus, but curious if there are any murmurs. Nothing super concrete. We are expecting a redesign of the Pro 8. We have been expecting a Pro redesign for a while now, and we're assuming it will show up with the Pro 8. Intel 11th gen probably. Coming in the fall, slightly larger display, probably a tiny bit thinner. But otherwise, still a Surface Pro. Okay, I think that's enough for today.
Fair enough.
All right, thank you for tuning in, guys. We'll be back next Friday with more, so tune in. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we're going live and all of that good stuff. But until then, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.